tonight, nigga. Let's get it.
Hey, I heard that shit. Hey, dog, let's drop GM shit again, nigga. Buy me 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. This helicopter. Bought me 100 choppers that came with 200 clips. I bet like it goes under. Call my name ain't Phil. I be so the corner. That means I can't slip. I'm skinny and jeans, boy. You tucking that old clip. Oh, you see your loser bag. You pop who sack flip. You take your big going
Well,
hand
dude.
when you in the wrong zip. You
They
see
Dr. John here, Claude, break this shit down.
I'm tight up this rap game.
You know
Call
what
it
I'm
the
saying?
vice grip. My t-shirt said fuck the coppers.
Ride, ride like I used to ride.
Poppers, I need me a helicopter.
One on the head, head. On
Not a problem solver. Still breaking roads, boy.
They bought me 100 bottles.
Know how to get a nigga. Buy me 100 models.
Real sweet little swag.
Ricos get to the dollar. Rappers be acting righteous. This ass, but hot rifles. Grandma no mind sniper with drum on assault rifle. Boom, 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers.
LJ Cup.
100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. All my looters is shooters. All my shooters is hoodlums. If you jump in that water, you gon' be straight barracuda. We blowing through to get to it. Gon' be some down when we do it. And the streets gon' be with it. The nigga know what you doing. Oh, pursue me, they do me. Like I'm straight out of movie. 12 goals in my mouth. Tell your girl to a groupie. What you peeping the plane? I see you leaving. I'm staying. I'm the man on the west side. Choppers hit on the man. 7 grams in a Swiss. And I'm full of that liquor. I'm beating on my chest like who wanna fuck with gorilla. Birmingham, Alabama, coming straight from the slammer. When it comes to the swag, it's one for bitches that handle.
Dr. John here, the clock, one of the great. So I'm trying to tell you about Islam and Christianity. West side, 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. Trouble 100 choppers. I bet not get caught. Buy me 100 choppers. Buy me 100 choppers. Let's go get it. Dr. John Henry Clark, my man, explained how Islam is not old enough. And they took it from Ethiopia. He gonna explain.
Practice what they preach. Now, this Sunday school teacher I belong to an African spirituality. I respect all religions when they practice what they preach. Now, we have to distinguish between what a religion is, what it can be, and what it promises to be. Now let us start with the present, then work back. Let us start with Elamazar Roy's series, The African.
Boom.
Because this series will and has done a lot of damage, principally because most African people who see the series never read one book on Islam, never read one book on Arab history, and do not plan to do so. And all they have is his word. And they're not going to check him out. He tells you a few good things about Africa, that he is running strictly an Arab Islamic game, and he is running it well. It is a con game. And it is not about African history at all, because he is not telling you African history. He is telling you basically a few tidbits of Africa.
That right there you see in the background, there is the plagiarization of Psalms 104 to the hymns of Aten, what I be talking about. See what I'm saying? If I take John Henry Clark out of the way right there, you'll see the hymns of Otten, plagiarized by song. Plagiarization. I don't just be talking. Songs came from Akhenaten. Akhenaten ain't never. This was Obama clone Akhenaten now. The last broad they had on there, somebody coming up with that was Nefertiti though. That was a bitch. He came in there with his mama. But anyway, he going back to this Islam shit. Without a John Henry Clark, one of the greats.
History in order to get his Arab Islamic point across, and he is getting it across exceptionally well. And that is what he set out to do.
What up, Muff?
Now, why don't we ask the question? A Jewish journalist fund financed it.
What?
Why haven't we asked, who is Ali Mazrui? Half African, half Arab.
A bastard.
Another question we have to ask, what is the role of the bastards of history? And he's a bastard. The bastards of history under pressure nearly always take sides with their father side of the family that is in power. Father was an Arab. He is more Arab than the Arabs. He's black when he want to be black, when it's his convenience. But in this series, this man is more Arab than the Arabs. You have to know some African history to know the game he's playing. But if you don't know African history, you don't know his omissions. You don't know his omissions about Ethiopia. You don't know he's left out the law.
About Ethiopia. Let's get it. What big
He left
at?
out Zayd bin Harith.
What okay?
If you don't know anything about the Ethiopian period of Islam, when Ethiopia saved Islam, then when you leave it out, you don't know it because you didn't know that there was a period when Ethiopia saved Islam. But if you read the Encyclopedia of Islam, the Encyclopedia of Islam said that Bilal was a slave, Zayd bin Harith was a slave. The Encyclopedia of Islam on this point is wrong. Bilal was a lawyer for that day. Zayd bin Harith was a military man. They were both Ethiopians. Why Ethiopians? Why did his rich wife choose two tutors for him, both Ethiopians?
Huh? What?
Now you got to look at Ethiopian history. Why the fascination for Ethiopia? When the Prophet was born, half of Arabia was an Ethiopian colony. But if you haven't studied black imperialism, you don't know this. There was a time when Africans ruled nations and dominated nations. But you never read Baldwin's Prehistoric Nations or Drusilla Dungy Houston's work, recently reissued, on the wonderful world of the Kushite Ethiopians. The second chapter, Chancellor Williams' work, The Destruction of Black Civilization, dealing with the southern African origins of Egypt. Look how much you have to know. Now, in his fourth stanza, the fourth session, which was really one of the better ones, dealing with exploitation, he dealt with it pretty well. He opens by downgrading the Western slave trade for 12 million people. Du Bois, in the end of the 19th century, said it was from 60 to 100 million people. The documentation has proven since then that it was at least twice that much. Then the other documentations on the Arab slave trade in a work called Slave Trade in the Indian Ocean prove that one period 35 million Africans were taken out. Then he said there's only 2 million Africans in the Arabian Peninsula. And he asked, where are those Africans? He's safe because most people don't know where are those Africans. Adam Roy, who's known me for 30 years, wouldn't dare stand before me and ask that question. Because I got an answer. I know where the Africans went who are not in the Arabian Peninsula. A lot of them went to India to perform the armies for the Maharajas. A lot of them went to Asia, different parts of Asia. Some went to China.
Afro-Asiatic.
And when the Portuguese came around to East Africa, the Arabs formed a partnership with the Portuguese. And the Portuguese and the Arabs got together. The Omani Arabs, and Al-Mazrui is an Omani Arab. The Omani Arabs established Zanzibar and made Zanzibar the largest slave trading force in the world. And if you look at the magnolia trees at Zanzibar, each tree represents an African who made the mistake of looking at one of the harem women of the Arabs, because if an African looked at one of the harem women, they'd cut his head off and they'd bury his body, and they would plant a magnolia tree over his body. Every magnolia tree at Zanzibar represented an African who made the horrible mistake of looking at one of those women.
Magnolia. They do the magnolia clap.
Work history of East Africa. Look in the index. Look at the word Mazaroi. You'll find some information on his family. Now he wouldn't ask me any question. What happened to those Africans? And there's only 2 million in the Arabian Peninsula now. See, he's whitewashing the Arab side of the slave trade. Now, when the meeting was called by UNESCO on slave trade in the Indian Ocean, they invited 50 Arab scholars. Not one showed up. They don't want to deal with it. And the African who is a Muslim don't want to deal with it. And those who are Muslim in this country don't even know about it and don't want to be told about it.
Yeah, no.
Because they think when they left Christianity, they joined a pure thing that is without fault. I'm not saying leave it. Stay with it. Stay with whatever you want to stay with. But realize all Western-oriented religions are faulty. All Western-oriented religions were in the slave trade one way or the other, one time or the other. And all religions that said that God endorsed slavery are liars and hypocrites. No religion and no God ever approved of anybody enslaving anybody. The Quran, and if you doubt it, you can take a copy here and find the passage, says that you can beat your wife, but you have to beat her with a stick only so long. The stick cannot be too large, but you can beat her. And when you go back to the laws of Hammurabi, 2000 BC, from Babylonia, and you can see the origin of some of this. This is supposed to be the first civilized law. Hammurabi said that slavery is a good thing. It's all right to have a slave, but you got to have some humanity about it. You've got to give him a day off. Give him a day off, it's all right. We need to read more of other people's history and more of our history. And if we had read more history, might understand the damage that the series is doing, and understand also that he is playing the role of a con man. Con man gives you a few flattering things to get you into the trap before he robs you. It makes the robbery looks palatable to you until you wake up and realize that you have been had. I don't know where he's going the rest of the series. I don't even know where he's going tonight. And this series will get more exposure than any educational series ever. It's on tonight, it'll be on Sunday, and it's on cable sometime during the week. So if you miss it tonight, don't worry, it'll be on Sunday. Why it's getting all this exposure? Somebody wants this message out there. Who wants that particular message out there? Who has the reason? Let's study its backers. Why the National Endowment for the Arts in America, your money was behind it. That's only $650,000. It cost about $5 million. The rest came from the Annenberg Trust. What's their interest in backing an Arab commentator? He wrote the commentators. He wrote the book about it. And yet another series was put on by an Englishman, Basil Davison, 3 times better than that one and more honest. Because knowing that he was white, every time he came to a critical part of the history, he found an African and put the African historian in front of the camera and let the African explain African history instead of he doing it. And I'm saying that the Englishman did a better job because the Englishman let the African explain instead of explaining himself. But Ali Mazrui is doing all of the explaining. All right. This talk is not about Ali Mazrui, but you have to understand something of what is happening to you. This is an Islamic whitewash. I hope you understand that. And the sad fact is that most of you and most people who saw it will not understand that this is what it is. And it is for a larger reason. And that reason is going to come out more and more. Now let's look at Africa on the eve of the rise of Islam. Religions rise and are created and grow in a vacuum. A condition has to be created for religions to rise. What was the vacuum? How did it create? Who created it? What was the condition in Africa, in Western Asia, called the Middle East, on the eve of the rise of Islam? If Islam rose in the 600s AD, what was happening in the 600s AD? The Roman Empire was falling apart. The Roman Empire had been falling apart militarily since 450 AD. 450 AD, a bunch of German thugs called Vandals moved down and hit the Roman Empire. Now, the Romans had propaganda out that the Roman was invincible militarily. And a lot of people believe this. It's just that the Vandals didn't read the propaganda and couldn't read anyway. And they did not know that if you hit a Roman, you're supposed to fall dead. And see, they just went and hit those Romans in such a way that the Romans never recovered. And they added a word to the language: vandalism. Destroy everything.
Vandalism, don't be
They warred
Viking.
on men because they had a wife and children, because they're too stable. They resented everything. Then they moved over to Spain and started a fight with the Visigoths, the Goths and the Visigoths.
Gog and Magog.
But only the people who read Roman propaganda continued to believe the nonsense. But the Romans would coach a long time. Now, they had already made a mess out of the management of Christianity, because now the fight between the Byzantines and the regular Romans continued. When the Romans, if you understand what I'm saying right now, maybe you'll straighten out some current thing. When the Romans stopped killing Christians and became Christians, they wanted to take over the apparatus of Christianity from the Africans who were managing it while they were killing Christians. When the European takes over anything, he wants to control all of it, not a part of it. Now, if some backward people called black leftists understood this, they would realize that if they help the white left into power, the white left is going to do them in. Now, I'm not less of a socialist because I'm saying this, but I'm more of an African nationalist and a Pan-Africanist because I'm saying this. Because I take my socialism from African social living and not from Karl Marx. I take mine straight from the originators of it, who originated it before the first European wore a shoe or lived in a house that had a window. So I know there's nothing new about it. The Africans had it all along. So I go to the original instead of the carbon copies created in Europe. Now, there are a whole lot of Africans today who don't understand that. Now, my point is that once the Romans became Christians, they accepted as a political apparatus, but the spirituality of it eluded them completely. Where are they now in history? The conference at Nicaea has already occurred, several conferences. That's behind a few hundred years now or more. The Romans, out of their weakness, you must separate the political Roman Empire from the Holy Roman Empire. The political Roman Empire is dead. When the political Roman Empire started to weaken, they began to have African emperors, the most colorful being Septimius Severus, and one of the last being Caracalla. And Septimius Severus is noted for being, he was also the governor of England.
Hey, that thumbs up. Fuck all that.
In addition to after being governor, emperor of Rome. All right, he was from the political Holy Roman Empire. Political Roman Empire. Now, the Holy Roman Empire has had, at this point, 3 African popes. Tertullian being a noted one. There were 3. And Tertullian wouldn't be popular today because he's really one of the first to say, vanity, vanity, thy name is woman. to so the holy sinner, the greatest writer the church has had is behind us now. I mean, St. Augustine. St. Augustine, really, who gave the church its literature, also African, gave it its being, has lived and practically died by now. Bishop of Hippo. He has written far more than the world knows. People know about his City of God and his Confessions. But there was so much of his writing that has not come down to us that is available in text and in documents. But he has lived and practically died by this point. At this point, my main point is that the African contribution to the church has been made, and Augustine looks back at what the Europeans have done to Christianity. He said, makes him laugh, especially the conference at Nicaea. These people don't understand Christianity. Now, the fight between Byzantium and Rome over the dominance of the church has literally wrecked the church. And this mismanagement and disenchantment now would cause a camel boy. Now, because you can't read, that doesn't mean you have no wisdom. Most of the people of that period couldn't read. That don't mean they're stupid. To begin to talk to other camel boys. Finally, he began to rise up in his profession, and his uncle began to give him a little leeway. He was working for his uncle, in the trades, the caravan trades between Damascus, and and he finally marries a rich widow. This rich widow secures for him 2 Ethiopian tutors that the Encyclopedia Islam mistakenly called slaves. They're not slaves. And Zayd bin Harith and Bilal. Bilal is the prophet's first convert. And Zayd bin Harith is listed as the 3rd. I'm at a loss to find out who was the 2nd of the African converts. All right. Oh, now this is the condition. The corruption of Christianity has reached a point for failing to find reform, to get reform. He began to send letters to the different heads of state, asking them to accept the new faith. And some of them laugh at it. Some of them tear up the letter. The Emperor of China takes it seriously. He didn't, so what's the big deal? he wrecks some horses. All right. One more religion don't mean that he wrecks a beautiful new mosque in China. It's all right. I mean, it didn't seem to bother him. He'll accept it. He'll give it a chance. Anybody want to join it? Here's a mosque. Yeah. Make no fuss about it. A few accepted, a few didn't. And then he tell me either go to accept the faith or go to pick up your sword because I'm gonna fight you. Now, Bilal accompanies the prophet on his various missions. And he is looking for someone to call the faithful to prayer. Bilal becomes the first of the Muslim to call the faithful to prayer. And he has looked, and he did among the men of people of Arabia. He don't want to use bells or, Then he comes home one evening. Bilal is his steward and his mace carrier and general all-around man. And he tells Bilal his problems. Then he asked Bilal to see if he can say the call to prayer. And he said, why have I been looking all over Arabia when you have the sweetest voice in all the land? Now Bilal becomes the one to call the faithful to prayer. And he makes out of it a great art form. And even today, if you go to Senegal and listen when the faithful are being called to prayer, the Africans do it, and it is a concert. It is a concert piece. Then go to Arabia, go to an Arab country and listen. Almost like a bad bird singing off tone. They can't bring it off to this day. They can't bring off that song. The beauty of that song. There's no God but Allah. Allah is, you know. It's repetitious, but it's the African who can take that repetition and infuse a spiritual beauty into it that you will not find in any other country, any other place in the world. Because in Libya, they just record an African voice and play it on record from the place that they get it that way. But Libya seemed to have been the only predominantly Arab country where the 5 prayers are called on time, and where you do see a degree of people moving toward the mosque to say the 5 prayers. In most Arab countries, the traffic keeps on and nobody pays the slightest bit of attention to it. But in Senegal, the predominantly African country, when it comes time to say one of the 5 prayers, the traffic stops. And you could be going to have a baby, but the traffic stops. And my point is that whether I believe in it or not, it's just so beautiful to see so many black people doing something in unison. Right or wrong is of no significance. No significance. Just see them doing something together. It's a thing of joy. Then you notice one thing, generally, the men and the women are closer together in African countries than in Arab countries. And inasmuch as the prophet's first public act at a time when, because they are a desert people, when a woman had 2 girls, if the 3rd child was a girl, they either got rid of her or put her to death. Women protested this. He defended their right to keep the children. Now, inasmuch as the prophet defended their right to keep their children, one wonders why and how, over the years, systematically, Islam became predominantly a male chauvinistic religion. Here you have to separate Islam from Arabism. Maybe it was something about the desert, and maybe it was the belief that a woman needed protection, but very few women rose to high position in the Arab side of the religion. And I can name one woman head of state in the black side of it who not only headed a state, but rode in the head of her army and commanded her armies in the field. 1500s, that's Elmina of Nigeria, in the state of Zara. I recently recommended that she be included among Budweiser's great queens of Africa. And I purposely supervised the writing of the copy in order to eliminate a whole lot of the misconceptions about her. And they are misconceptions and rumors. The rumor was, because she never married, is that she took a new lover each night, and if his performance wasn't adequate, she had him killed in the morning. There was no proof of this at all. And if that rumor got out, I guess half of the male population in the world might disappear. Even stars don't perform at their best every night. So that wasn't an important thing anyway. The important thing was this strong woman defended it wasn't Nigeria then, it was in the Hausa country. The state of Zara defended her state and built walls of defense that still can be seen in this part of Nigeria. Defended her right as a woman without getting into the nonsense about liberation. Held her ground, defended her lineage, and left her mark on that territory.
So it's book your next hotel.
If you don't book, it's a shame.
So it's resort.
Sweet vacation home for your next great stay.
Territory of Africa until that part, there's a part of Nigeria that is literally called Elmina City. And she was a Muslim. And that did not happen any other place among Muslims for women. That did not happen. It surely did not happen any place among the Arabs. And the revolutionary African, especially revolutionary against colonialism, happened nearly always on that side, on the African side. That meant that the African accepted the religious side and the spirituality, and that Islam said something to the African that it did not say to the Arab, and that it still says something to the African that it is not saying to the Arab. That if Islam is to be rescued and made the great spiritual and moral religion it was intended to be, instead of the political instrument for opportunists, it will be the African who will make it so. He has the capacity to make it so. And this is what we need to look at. Not to ignore the Arab at all, not to ignore the fact that it was from Arabia that the religion came out, swept over into North Africa, and had its rapid growth. All right, now, after this religion barely got underway, the prophet had some difficulty, had to leave Medina, then literally had to fight his way back to Mecca. Bilal was with him all of the time, and so was Zayd bin Harith. Zayd bin Harith was the governor of the Prophet's tribe, the Quraysh, and he was married into the Prophet's family, one of the highest honors possible. And he is hailed as one of the great heroes of Islam in the Encyclopedia of Islam, and other literatures of Islam. The literature of Islam writes about the great blacks, but they don't tell you they were black. And what we need to do is to do a little more research in the area of Arabia and the presence of so many Africans at the time. We need also to look at the number of African neglected heroes and Islam and bring them back to fore, bring them back into world consideration, and understand that Islam came into being so fast. It is literally a religion made from a composite religion, and the least original of the world's religions. It had to take something from Christianity, something from Judaism, something from Zoroastrianism. That is nothing that one needs to apologize for. And yet, it came into being at a time. It served a great purpose. And it had to turn to many places for haven and for shelter. On the advice of Zayd bin Harith and Bilal, some of the key followers were sent to Ethiopia for shelter while the trouble in Arabia blew over. The prophet said, "Go to Ethiopia, go to that land of righteousness where no one is wrong." This is the kind of reputation Ethiopia had among Muslims at the time. It had been a Christian nation for over 300 years. Other people against the move went ahead and told the Ethiopians that these people were thieves. And when the Ethiopian king received them, he said that your message is not much different from the Christian message. And he received them and sheltered them until the difficulty blew over, and they went back and strengthened and got the faith well underway. Now, Bilal stayed with the prophet the rest of his life, and when the prophet was dying, he literally appointed Bilal as the next caliph, and he refused it. Now look what would have happened to the faith had Bilal became the next caliph after the prophet. It would have been a different religion altogether. But he refused the honor, but he did not call the prayers except 2 more times. After that, he called the prayers for Omar, the first caliph, and 1 time for a special meeting for the first caliph. And then he either went back to Ethiopia or he died. We know Zayd bin Harith died in a battle against the Byzantines. But these 2 Ethiopians had helped to lay the foundation and the strength for Islam. Islam now was ready to move out of Arabia over into North Africa, to move into the vacuum left by the confusion of the Romans and the mismanagement of Christianity. North Africa was in such a sad state that the people were ready to welcome almost anything with the disappear with the wreckage left by the Romans. So there was very little resistance. In a little while, the Muslim armies had swept across most of northern Africa. A little resistance from the Berbers. These are relatives of the Arabs who had arrived much earlier. And this resistance didn't last too long. When this resistance died down, Islam swept into the Western Sudan and began to convert Africans. Now, Islam swept into the Western Sudan. Understand me now, if you can visualize a map of Africa, they went down into West Africa, not the coast, but inland away from the coast. That is called the Western Sudan, skirting the coast. And they converted a group of Africans. And these Africans became purists. So much purists that these Africans, after 50 years or so, came back into Morocco and told those who converted them, you are not properly observing the faith. I'm purer than you are. Now, you have to understand this, because Western Africa, the Western Sudan and Western Africans were converted by Islamized blacks. East Africa was converted by Arabs. Islamized blacks knew what part of African culture to leave intact in spite of Islam. You can see the difference to this day. And East Africa, converted by the Arabs, who had no respect for African culture then or now, they destroyed a lot of African culture. They married African women, and after 50 years, they had produced enough black-looking Arabs, and ultimately they would use them to go inland where the Arabs were not permitted to go and start the East African slave trade. Over 600 years before the European slave trade. And the Arab is the only branch of Islam to use Islam as an aspect of slavery. Now, the Africans who converted those in Western Sudan left the matrilineal system intact, meaning the lineage coming down through the female remained intact in Western Africa, while in Eastern Africa, the Arab installed the patrilineal system, meaning the inheritance comes through the oldest son, and the lineage comes down through the male side of the family. It has wrecked the culture to this very day. It has confused the culture to this very day. Now, when they arrived in Egypt, they arrived at a culture that had been raped by foreigners for 1,000 years. They had no respect for it or understanding of it then. They have no respect for it or understanding for it now. The Arab traditionally has no respect for non-Arabic culture, and practically none for African culture in other parts of Africa. And this is the basic drawback and the basic difference between Arabs spreading Islam and Africans spreading Islam. African Islam is basically different from Arab Islam. African Arab Islam is a form of Arab supremacy and condescension. Just like white Christianity is a form of white condescension. They think they're doing you a favor to let you in their church. The church becomes their private property, just like the Arabs think they're doing you a favor when you come into one of the mosques. And if you go to Mecca and see the discrimination against colors, different colors, you will find that out is that even in Mecca, there is color discrimination. And they look you straight in the eye and deny the whole thing. All right, now, they're in Egypt. But out of the Western Sudan would come a great general, Tarak Ben Zad, Jabral Tarak. He would discover a weakness in Spain fighting the Goths and the Visigoths and the Vandals fighting among themselves. The dissident element in Spain would do something white people rarely ever do. They would sneak across into Africa and tell the Africans how weak the whites are, and said they are so weak, if you want to conquer them, it's an easy thing to do. Jabral would send a testing army, about 10,000, just to test their minds. You find it is easy. Then later, he would send 60,000. He'd take
Wix. One platform. Any website. Unlimited creation. Describe your needs and goals, and AI will transform your tailored...
Take Spain. Now this is purely an African conquest. You are not dealing with the Arab conquest of Spain at first, because the Arabs were not there at first. The initial conquest of Spain was African, not Arab. That army came from the Senegamia, now Senegal, and parts of what is now Mauritania.
I think it'd be good for us now too.
And when they moved over and conquered Spain, Madame Bourguiba has written a book on it that bears the name Tarak Ben Zad. The Rock of Gibraltar is named after him. It's the hill or the mountain of Tarak. Gibraltar is a corruption of his name, Jabral. And she describes the army going into Spain. She says the army was black as ink. The general was blacker still. Meaning the general was the only one riding a white horse. So his blackness against that whiteness looked blacker than the rest of them. But the horse was better dressed than the kings of Europe, with silk and brocade. And the women taking off garments and throwing him in front of his horse, waving. Let me beat the foot. I'd like to see Hollywood put this in Technicolor. Militarily, the Africans took over Spain, and militarily, the Africans held Spain until 1240, while the Arabs did come in. But the military hold on Spain was African. Now let's look at the Africans and the Arabs, that combination called Moors in Spain. What did they do? What did the Africans give to Islam? Why do you find a toleration between Christians and Arab, Christians and Muslims in Spain that never existed before ever. It is the African spirituality. They coexisted with the Catholic Church side by side. They worked out a humane agreement. No mass killing. They built public schools. They built public baths. There's a chapter in John Jackson's Introduction to African Civilization called Africa and the Civilizing of Europe. You would do well to read it. That chapter alone is worth the price of the book. But there are many other books on the Africans and the Arabs in Spain. They gave Spain the greatest civilization it has known before or since. They built a great university, Salamanca. They translated the great works of the masters of Europe, including a lot of works they had stolen from Africa. Europe had forgotten its own masters. The Africans translated it. It was the African that suggested that the Jews be appointed to the chairs in the mind sciences. God, what an error. All the ideology chairs. It was the Africans who took the Jews into Spain and made them the grandees, the money managers of Spain. And when the Africans lost power, some of them went Holland and found the Dutch East India and the Dutch West India Company and became managers of the slave trade. People find no compunction of turning on us when it's their convenience to do so. But their performance and the partnership between the Africans and the Arabs and the Berbers in Spain was a long and beneficial partnership and a fine moment in their history and in world history. The African and the Arab and Islam had united and held Europe at bay for almost 1,000 years. And when that partnership went bad, both of them were in trouble. By 1450, the Africans and the Arabs began to argue among themselves over nonsense at first. But 1240, the Portuguese had broken away from the Africans, but Spain was still under their domination. Then half of Spain, by 1455, had broken away, the Castilian part. And now they had colonial aspiration of their own. And they went to the Pope to discuss the matter. He was the leading authority of the world where Europe is concerned. Now they wanted a piece of the world. They wanted to start dividing up the world among themselves. And the Pope told them, you are both authorized to reduce to servitude all infidel people. In other words, you need not feel guilty about the slave trade that had already started along the coast of West Africa. The fact that there were great independent states inside of Africa is something I'll talk about later on. My main point here is that Islam had swept down into the Western Sudan. That a lot of people say the great states of Ghana, Mali, and Songay were Muslim states. Ghana was never a Muslim state. In fact, Ghana was destroyed by Muslims. By Abu Bakr of the Susus. When he pulled his army out of Ghana to help his co-religionists in Spain, he died. I'll be talking about these other states in more detail in another way. But what I'm concluding with is that the spread of Islam into the Western Sudan had brought a language, a sense of accounting, and a religion that had a fascination for the African. But now, the argument between the Africans and the Arabs, spoiling the performance they had, that almost 1,000-year performance that had been good not only for them but good for mankind. They had given North Africa some stability, and they had given the Western Sudan some stability. It came 1492, and the least significant event would be the so-called discovery of the New World. The greatest event in the history of that period would be really the Africans and the Arabs, collectively called Moors, would lose their hold on Spain and be pushed out. Be pushed out of Spain, and they would lose the Mediterranean. They had blocked Europe in the Mediterranean. They had forced Europe out of the Mediterranean, and they had forced Europe into the Middle Ages. Now Europe had discovered longitude and latitude. It had come out of its box. They'd gone back to sea. They had learned some maritime techniques from the school at Salamanca, that the Africans had translated the information from Spain, and they would turn on the very Africans who translated it for them and the very Arabs. The fight between the Africans and the Arabs would facilitate the rise of Europe. But except had the Africans and the Arabs got together at this point in history, fighting over various interpretations of Islam, they could have stopped Europe and stopped the slave trade, but instead of stopping the slave trade, the Arabs went into the slave trade, disgraced Islam, disgraced themselves, and left the African without protection, something which we should never forgive. And after this, the Africans, mixed Africans, Berbers and Arabs in Morocco, sore heads, turned inward on Africa to rob the nations to the south. They recruited European mercenaries with modern weapons for that day, and with some guns supplied by Queen Elizabeth I, they invaded the Western Sudan, destroyed the great state of Sangay, and the long night that was to last 500 years had started, and the good that Islam had done was being spoiled. Now you had Muslim against Muslim facilitating the spread of the slave trade inland. I am saying that while this is one of the world's greatest religions, its redemption is going to come from Africans who will rescue it, give it a real meaning, make it a world religion, make it a world force for unity, and give it the sense of tolerance and respect for other cultures and religions that it once had and integrate it into the concept of African culture and African liberation, either do this or throw it into the ash can of history. Thank you.
They have decided to establish these clinics in which to dispense prescriptions and to supply birth control devices to kids. Now, I have spoken to various people in the Board of Education department as there only today. I sat down with this guy who's the Director of Public Education or something like that. And I asked him to explain the policy, the reasons why, and so forth. And we sat down there for about half an hour. And this man could not give me a rational explanation of it. I mean, he is in charge of the program, and he did not even understand it, and he confessed as much. So it seems to me that what we got here is very clearly an attempt to deal with a very serious issue in a very cosmetic way. And what we're seeing in New York City are cosmetic ways of dealing with problems. Our leaders have no clue as to the solution of problems. Their way of dealing with the drug problem is to have a senator dress up like a drug addict or something like that and buy some stuff in the Upper West Side. The police commissioner's way of dealing is to transfer our cops once every 5 years. Their way of dealing with education of black children is to distribute birth control devices. So these people have seriously run out of ideas. They are intellectually bankrupt. Now, what we're going to do is this. We intend to do something about the problem, because it has nothing to do with the high teenage pregnancy rate of black children. Because it's true that the teenage pregnancy rate is high, but giving them condoms is not going to solve that problem. And we intend to bring a lawsuit, against the Board of Education on several grounds. First of all, that this policy that they're implementing is not very clear and precise. It violates their own standards. And secondly, and more important, that it is a violation of the rights of blacks. It has a discriminatory impact on black folks, since all of the clinics are located in black and Hispanic areas. If it was a great program, don't you think that it would have been in Canarsie and some of those places? When they start locating them just in black areas, I think it's a very good idea that it's not all that great as it's touted to be. So we intend to stop this this type of action by bringing a lawsuit against them. And it's not only intended to just stop this practice, but intended to force them to come up with serious solutions to the problem of black kids in the community. Because we are convinced that they have no clue as to the solution. And the only thing that is going to force them to do it is to stop this practice and let them seriously rethink about the problems of homelessness, crack, drugs, teenage pregnancies, and so forth. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask each and every one of you, if you can, to be there next Wednesday, at 6 o'clock at the public discussion, when each and every one of you can make a contribution. Because they feel that we have a way of just kind of talking, hey man, we don't like this and that. But when it comes to the real showdown, they say that they don't see too many of us there. So let us make our presence felt. It affects us, okay? It affects your kids. And make your presence felt at that Board of Education by being there next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Thank you. 110 Livingston Street. To the first floor.
First floor, 110 Livingston Street. And just to reiterate, and to bring some of you up to date, I don't know if it was mentioned, how well it was mentioned, but are we all aware of Mr. Mickens' situation over at Boys and Girls High? All right, he's the principal over at Boys and Girls High. And a few days ago, he was walking down the hallway and he saw some of the young brothers with condoms blowing them up like balloons. And so he asked them, so where'd you get that from? They said, well, we had it from the health clinic. So he went to the health clinic and he said, to stop distributing any more contraceptives until they can discern this program and evaluate it and find out what it's all about. And Robert Wagner, who's the president of the Board of Education, said he's going to make Frank Mickens an example by punishing him. Now, how they're going to do that, they have not explained yet, but they have targeted the brother. And what we want to do, part of what we want to do is to say to the Board of Education, you're not going to touch this brother. All right? You're not going to let him touch this brother, because he also stated that one of the reasons why he was doing that was because the parents in his particular school were on his side, and they were encouraging him to take a stand, and that he was going to meet the needs of his constituency. So we have a brother who is courageous, a brother who is responsive to the people that he is accountable to. And we don't have too many of those type of brothers and sisters around. And when we find a brother like that, a diamond amongst us like that, we need to give him. All right, sister.
Dr. Clark, who did you say made up the vandals, the people that you called the vandals?
They were Germans. They were what became Germans. They were Teutonic people. And they came out of what later became Germany. And their descendants can be seen in North Africa today. You occasionally in North Africa you see a jet black person, tall, with blue eyes, descendants of the Vandals.
Exactly who are the Arabs and where did they come from?
They came from the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabs are really a mixture of people. They really...
Don't let spills ruin your day. Quick spot cleanup for carpet, upholstery, and more has never been easier with the Ryobi Swift Clean Spot Cleaner.
Light of reality, because we have not faced reality, because we as a people live in a world of fantasy. And once we face reality,
University of Alabama in Birmingham. My name is Lee Naves, and it's my privilege this evening to serve as moderator for the program. We have two very special guests. One is Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinen, who is an African anthropologist, an educator, an author, and a scholar. He's on my right, and on my left is Dr. George Simmons. Dr. Simmons is also a professor. He was born in the St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, USA. And we will discuss a number of topics this evening. These gentlemen are here to talk about African origins. As you know, in America, Black History Month is celebrated every February. Without further ado, let's get right into it, because I know they have some interesting viewpoints that will stimulate your thinking, even if you disagree with them or agree. I'm going to call you Dr. Ben, if that's okay, because that's what people usually call you.
yes,
One of the more controversial positions that you take is that black Africans landed in America 2,000 years before Columbus?
I would not specify the day, but probably exceeding 2,000 years. The fact is that Columbus never came to the United States of America or North and South America. He came as close as San Salvador. There's a rumor that says that Columbus came to America. He did not come to America. He came to an island off America. Vespucci came to America, not Columbus. He came to the Caribbeans. But it is commonly stated, just as much as they state, that Columbus discovered America while the Indians sat down watching him doing it. Now, but the knowledge of Africans in the Americas quite knowledgeable to scholars. The fact that it's suppressed doesn't have any validity at all.
Let me bounce a couple of things off of you. One thing, this article that I'm going to be referring to our home audience and to our studio audience, this article came out in the September 1981 issue of Science Digest, and it's entitled Black Kings in Ancient America. You and some other black scholars believe that these people, African people, came to this continent before Columbus.
We don't believe, we know.
How do you know? What evidence?
The evidence is there. For example, when you go to Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, and at Ecuador and places like that, they have caches of Carthaginian money found 200 feet down in the ground, meaning that they were preludial disruptions, and those money was buried. So it indicates a period of time at least. From that, when you look at the strategy, you could tell the period of time in which they've been here. And when you're talking about Carthage, you're talking about at least 212 BC, when Carthage was finally destroyed by the Romans. Again, the Queen Makeda, which you call the Queen of Sheba, there are maps which Rome, the church in Rome, the so-called Holy Father, has suppressed these maps from the time of Justinian, showing South America and what is today called Central America. The maps there, and Makeda goes back to at least 892 BC.
Before Christ. Let's point out another thing, just from the same article. I don't know if we can see this on television, but here is a picture. Tell me what this is, and why do you see this as proof of the presence of Africans in America before?
That is the head of an Olmec, and the Olmecs were said to be the first of the indigenous Americans. And if an Olmec walked in here, then you would believe that he had come from the middle of Africa. And there is no doubt about it that all of the writers prior to racism admitted that the Olmecs were in fact Africans who had come across here. There is no doubt when Pigafetta and others, the point is that Van Sertima is writing and others, but Leo Weiner in 1938 at Harvard University wrote a 2-volume book for which he was fired about the Africans, Olmecs being Africans. And
let me bounce this off of you, okay? You take the same statue. You say, that they're obviously black features, thick lips, broad nose.
The stereotype.
Okay, the stereotype. Other anthropologists say, I think Michael Cole was one of them. He says that this is not a black man. He said the people who made these statues, which I understand are 8 feet high, the people who made these statues didn't have sharp enough tools to give them white features, so they're not really black statues. They're white people carved with crude tools. What's your response to that?
It's strange that the tools were not sharp enough to make narrow noses, but it was sharp enough to put eyelids. So it would seem to me that an eyelid is harder to make than a thin nose. But Michael Cole is no less a racist than the head of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, what's the difference between Michael Cole Reagan and the Ku Klux Klan? It have the same philosophy. What is the difference between the fellows writing the Bible and write about the Queen of Sheba saying to Solomon, look not, ye daughters of Canaan, look not upon me because I'm black. My parents sent me in the vineyard and that's all this nonsense. She's black because nature made her black. Her mother and father were black. That's why she's black. Had nothing to do with going in the vineyard, even though it's in the Bible.
Okay, you talked about religion. We're going to get to that in a while. Let me turn to Dr. Simmons. You also agreed with this position that Africans were in this...
I have no problem, no doubt. As a matter of fact, speaking about, like Dr. Ben mentioned, and you spoke about Michael Deco, I owned a book several years ago and still have it in my possession, by Michael D. Coe himself, who is considered one of America's leading archaeologists and anthropologists from Yale, one of America's most prestigious schools. In his own work, he referred to them as Negroid. And he went further to state the title of the book is America's First Civilization, what you call civilization. And to turn around and to tell these youngsters and other people in America in particular that the black men was the first to build any type of civilization in the Americas will be disturbing to Americans. And so...
Let me ask you this. Yes. Even if you're right, let's say you're right, what difference does it make?
It makes a lot of difference.
What kind of difference?
It takes the inferiority complex out of the black man who felt that his only beginning and relationship here in this part of the world is that of slavery. Then it puts him in the driver's seat. Because, again, they don't tell you that there are man-made hills within the United States. They call them mounds. And they range from in the Midwest all the way down the eastern seacoast of the United States. And they have found artifacts in them that are similar to things found in West Africa and in Egypt, which is Northeast Africa, that predates the arrival of the so-called indigenous Indians to these lands. Another thing is some years ago, one of the major television networks back in New York, I don't remember exactly which one, ABC or which, I did a documentary, and they said that these Olmecs are the ones who brought right into the Americas about 3000 BC. To tell blacks that they ought to be glad to enter into these schools of higher learning today in order to read and write, because their ancestors back in Africa couldn't read and write. You see what it will do to tell them that they brought right into the Americas? Antonio Pigafetta, that Dr. Ben mentioned, who sailed with Magellan when Magellan came to the so-called New World in 1519, when they landed at the land of Virgin, which we now call Brazil, they were met by people in canoes that carried as many as 40 people. And Antonio Pigafetta recorded that these people were jet black. It seemed that they came out of the infernal marshes. That meant that they were burnt. He said, naked and black as they are in 1519, 27 years after Columbus's arrival to the so-called New World. Another thing they don't tell you, again, you heard my associate...
Well, why haven't we heard these things before? Why don't we read them in the New York Times, the Birmingham News?
If I stole another man's country, and I brought your ancestors here to work for me, could I tell you how great your ancestors were and still expect to keep you in slavery?
Well, let me give you a better, not better necessarily, but an added situation of that. Most black people in Birmingham, Alabama, like in Harlem, New York, are Christians, and they go to in a black community, a black minister, a black congregation, but with a white Jesus, because they didn't know that that Jesus, up until Pope Julius II, had the first black Jesus painted. He had Michelangelo to do it, but up until that time, the world worshipped the black Madonna and Child. The present Pope is going back to Poland to worship at the statue of the black Madonna and Child. That's in the New York Times. But what the Times says the next day, don't worry about the black Madonna and the Child. She was originally white, but there was a storm in the 16th century, passed by and turned it black. But the same storm must have gone to Spain, and then it went to Ethiopia, and it went to the Soviet Union and turned all the black Madonnas black. It was a hell of a storm.
Okay, let's get together here. I mean, we're jumping around, and I think we're going to have a beautiful, interesting hour. Okay. Because of this subject, I was going to get to this later, but since you opened it, let's deal with it. Okay. You're in the Bible Belt, gentlemen.
I heard so.
You heard so. And I must tell our audience, we had dinner together earlier, and we got into this a little bit. So you're going to hear some interesting things. Because you guys are taking issue with a lot of what we grew up with in the Bible as fact. And you tell me that's not so. You got to prove that.
I brought it right here. What is it? Before I show you the picture you want to see. This is Pope Pius XII. In his private chapel, praying to the black Madonna and Child and all the popes of Rome. In their private, just from the church. The Roman Catholic Church itself. I just got rid of the copy of the history of the Black Madonna last night. I brought one copy. It's published by the Roman Catholic Order of Nuns called the Daughters of St. Paul. And they said that the picture of the Black Madonna child in Poland is reputed to have been painted by St. Luke. Now, St. Luke is said to have been one of Jesus' disciples. He ought to know what Jesus had looked like. So if he painted a black woman and child, who am I to say that he wasn't? Besides that, however, in Anacalypsis...
So now you guys are saying Jesus was black?
We're not saying it. It's what has been written up until the Nicene Conference of Bishops in 325, when Rome, under the order of Constantine, the Roman emperor, ordered the 219 bishops at Nicaea, and they took away Christianity from the Africans. Just remember that before they said Jesus was born in a manger in Bethlehem, they said he was born in a cave in Ethiopia. It was at the Nicene Conference that changed that. Let's go further. Wait a minute, let me be sure I'm following you now. You're saying that the birth of Christ, as we know it, is not accurate. It's a farce. It was only... You realize what you're saying? A farce, a lie. You know what a lie is?
A lie is a lie.
The person who wrote that at the Nicene Conference of Bishops in 325 A.D., Constantine, the Roman emperor, ordered a conference be held because Rome wanted to take over Christianity from the people who started it. Christianity was started with Pantheus and Boetius in a place called Alexandria in Egypt. And Egypt is in Africa. I saw it up to January the 9th, it was there. You talked about that a little bit last night in your lecture. There was a lecture last night, Dr. Simmons, here on campus. He talked about the separation of people don't want us to see Egypt as part of Africa. You talked about the historical thing about blacks being in Egypt as well.
Yes, what I did last night...
I don't want to get away from the other point.
No, I just saying that what happened is that I dealt last night the fact that Herodotus, the institutions of higher learning, white institutions, considered the father of history. He himself, when he visited Egypt around 450 BC, almost half a thousand years before Christ, said that the Ethiopians, the Egyptians, the people of cultures, which is part of present-day Turkey, were people of black skin and woolly hair. All right? And so I just want you to understand that the Egyptians we now see are conquerors, just like people who came here and took this land from the Indians, so that they're not indigenous to Africa, those who now rule Egypt. And Egypt is just as much a part of Africa as Birmingham or Alabama is part of the so-called United States.
Let me just be clear on this. So what you're saying to me now is that the people that we see, Sadat and all those guys, are not true Egyptians?
No, the fact that
Sadat's mother was a Sudanese, Nasser's mother was a Sudanese, but their fathers were Arab conquerors. The one that was the African was Mohammed Naguib, the first president of Egypt, the one that overthrew Farouk. But 1 year after that, since he was looking for a hookup with the other Nile Valley countries as it used to be in antiquity, he was removed by the Arab conquerors. The Arabs didn't come to Egypt until 640. The first non-African people came to Egypt, otherwise called the Hyksos, in 1675 BC. The Africans there were already in the 13th dynasty period. They had built every pyramid you saw there before. They had done the S-turn in the Nile. They built every one of the major temples that had already been built, including the Grand Lodge of Luxor. The first European to come there did not arrive until the Greeks arrived with Alexander II, the son of Philip of Macedonia.
Look, I'm a college graduate. I never heard all that stuff.
Because they didn't intend to teach you that. They can't tell you that you're inferior and teach you that you taught Egypt, Europe. The first Europeans to be civilized by the Africans were the Greeks. When you heard of Homer, the first European to have written anything, you couldn't miss that. They said that Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And that was not until 833 BC. The Africans had already in 255,000 at the Tassili Mountain. They had the Sibyllian period, first, second, and third, the pre-dynastic period, all the way up. The Africans had produced men like this, Imhotep, the multi-genius that designed the step pyramid of Saqqara. The first man to be a physician that even Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine, is giving him credit and call him the god of medicine. The Greeks changed his name from Imhotep to Aesculapius. There he is. There he is.
This gets into what you were saying. So wait a minute. You guys are telling me now that black men taught Homer and
As a matter of
went
fact,
to Egypt to school.
As a matter of fact, the Egyptians said Homo was Egyptian, not Greek.
That's right. It's only the Europeans said that. The Westerners now said he was. But let us go back. Remember that Homer himself said in the Odyssey what? That the gods Zeus and Apollo, Europe's first gods, came from Ethiopia. Go read it. And I didn't write it. He wrote it. Thales, from Thales down to Socrates, and Socrates down to Aristotle, which they call the pre-Socratian philosophers and the post-Socratian philosophers. Each and every one, including Plato, who spent 15 years in Egypt receiving their education.
You're saying Plato was educated in Egypt?
15 years.
See,
before all heard nothing of him. Every one of them.
What you had me believe then also, so part of what you said last night is that Plato and these guys went back home and they were big guys. But they were taught in Egypt? Is that what you said?
They came there for their
education.
And they said it. They didn't hide it. It's the modern writers, the modern instructors and professors who are trying to deny it.
You can't have in a racist school in Birmingham non-racist education.
Let me get to something you said last night that's not going to make you very popular in this town and may not allow you to get safely out of town. You told an audience last night that you saw, I think, in a tomb in Egypt.
Yeah.
You saw it with your own two eyes, right?
Yes.
You told me that Moses, there were more than 10 commandments. Moses just took
42. The negative confessions. Moses isn't supposed to have been born until 1349 BC. The Africans were already in the 18th dynastic period. Akhenaten, who died before Moses was born, and Imhotep, who died more than 2,000 years before the birth of Moses, and others at the Grand Lodge of Mem had 42 laws called now the negative confession, one for each nome. They go like this: I have not killed man nor woman. I have not spoken ill of the gods. Moses is supposed to be born in Egypt, they said, at a place called Sukkot. Already, it says that Moses got the 10 commandments of Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is still in Africa, right? The Sinai Peninsula is a part of Egypt. More so, is it possible for Moses to be born in Egypt, educated in Egypt? At age 85, he's still in Egypt, and he did not learn the negative confessions. Is it possible for you to go to school, born in the United States, go to kindergarten, elementary, junior high school, and college, and never heard of the United States Constitution? Then it would have been impossible for Moses, when everybody had to read the negative confession 5 times a day, for Moses not to have seen those 42 laws and extracted 10 of them, leave 32 more. Now, if you could go to the temple of Setaiwan at Abydos, to go to the tomb of Ramesses VI at the Valley of the Kings, go to the temple of Edfu, where you would, by the way, see the story of an immaculate conception and a virgin birth, 4,100 years before the Mary and Jesus story.
As a matter of fact, wait.
No, let me just put it in the form of a question then. I mean, I don't want to stop this, because we're here for information. But what you're trying to get me to believe is that Moses didn't get the 10 commandments from Mount Sinai, but he got them
from his fellow Africans.
Moses was a high priest in Egypt, a high priest of the Egyptians in Egypt. Then what was he teaching? He wasn't a high priest of the Jews.
They were no Jews in those days. They called themselves. Remember now, there was no Israel yet. Israel is not until 1196. And when we to hear of Abraham, Avram as he was called, coming into Egypt, the Africans are already in Egypt, already in their 14th dynastic period when he shows up. All of the pyramids are built. That's another thing. Everyone, the 62 pyramids in Egypt were built before the first Jew was born.
Why was he fleeing from the Pharaoh?
Let me ask what was the charge? I can write anything when I want to write, you know. Who's going to stop me from writing if I got the power?
I was about to ask you, what kind of trouble do you get into for holding these kind of views?
Oh, the other day, a black sister spat on my face, and because she couldn't take that. She couldn't take that Jesus was black. She said, no. I mean, he had no color. If he didn't have no color, how John the Baptist saw him to baptize him?
Do you realize that you're getting at the foundation, that you're shooting and digging away at the foundation of what most of us grew up believing?
Yeah, well, we believe a lot of things for a long time. One thing, they give us 3 pages in the Bible. Slave, obey your master. That's what we believed for the longest time. They said that Jesus said, so how would Jesus, who fought the system, say to the slave, obey your master? He didn't sound rational with it. So look, most of the things, we're in a European system. You could come to this university and spend 4 years, go back and spend another 2 for your master's, and another 1 or 2 for your doctorate, and never had any course at all about Africans. But every day you come here, you got courses about Europeans. This is an extension of European culture, European belief, European racism. And it has no intent of teaching about the Africans. The Africans built the Europeans' first university, the University of Salamanca in Spain. These are historical records. It's just like...
Hey, one of the things you said last night is that it's not just black people who are saying these things.
No, most of this information are written by white. And white folks. It's just that they don't emphasize it in the classroom. As a matter of fact, let me back you up when you open up the discourse. We were speaking about Columbus. None of them in here, none of the listening audience, even in the air, had the faintest idea that in the life of Columbus, when after his death, his family had to go to court because charges was raised, and this is in the record in the Vatican, in the secret archives of the Vatican, that Columbus was shown a map of where the Queen of Sheba that Dr. Ben spoke about, this black woman who had mated with Solomon and produced the son, Menelik I, and they lived more than 900 years before the birth of Jesus, had already sailed through what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, came to lands to the west that was longer than Africa and Europe combined, and that, brother, is North, South, and Central America.
May I add this? Right here at this university they teach, and I've just been here a few days, right, a day. They teach in this institution because it's the same as Cornell anywhere, that Hippocrates was the father of medicine. He's not until 333 BC. Let me read this for you.
Okay, you teach at Cornell, is it?
I teach at Cornell also.
They let you teach this kind of stuff at Cornell?
They teach it now, I'm there.
Okay.
1700, in 1700 BC, that's 1400 years before Hippocrates, you can find the Kahun medical papyrus. Papyrus is paper. A compendium of information about women's diseases and pregnancies. In 1600 BC, that's 1300 years before Hippocrates, the Edwin C. Smith Papyrus, a comparative surgical text and anatomical inquiry. It especially deals with the spinal column. 1550, let me drop the one here. The Ebers Papyrus. There is the whole book on it. A medical paper by Queen Hatshepsut, the first known queen in history, an Egyptian queen. A papyrus designed to show women how to develop a method to stop pregnancy, to insert into the vagina, made of the shrub of acacia and honey, which break down into lactic acid. Not only that, Monsanto, DuPont.
So we're talking about birth control.
Birth control in 1550 BC by the Africans.
It's a long time before the pill.
A few days before the pill.
But keep in mind, however, hold it, keep in mind that Europe is not yet in history.
European history. Greece ain't arrived yet.
All I ask one at a time.
All right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Their civilization began. Homer had not written his Iliad and Odyssey. And the hero.
Okay, all the stuff that you're saying we can find this.
Look, I'm nothing say if it's not here, it's either in Doc's library or mine back in New York. Nothing we take for granted.
For the books that we brought down.
And you saying they're not all written by black men?
No. Anacalypsis is written, look now. Okay. Anacalypsis is a 2-volume work by Sir Godfrey Higgins, written in 1838 in England and published by Watson Company. The Golden Bow is a 13-volume book by Sir James Fraser, published simultaneously in the United States and England, and it was published in 1938. Bible Myths and the Parallels in Other Religions, written by Thomas W. Jones, and is published in 1887 by Watson Company, London, England. The Ruins of Empire by Comsier Volney is published, there it is. It's published in 1792 by simultaneously in England and France, done by a man who was with Napoleon Bonaparte.
Let me just say this about that. If we just give you the benefit of the doubt and consider what you're saying to be true, I mean, you are chipping away at everything we've ever been taught, most of what we believe.
When you were taught it as slaves. Nobody.
Slave in 3 pieces?
Yes. We are no longer physical slaves, but we are mental slaves. And this is the worst form of slavery. Some of us believe that the Cadillac and the house on the beach makes us free. But it's the mind that makes us free.
Well, I'm just glad I have to ask the questions and don't have to defend any of this stuff. Go into something else for a minute. Tell us about some of those pictures, because I want to get much into this hour.
Well, this picture that you are looking at right here is the picture of Pope St. Peter, the first Pope of Roman Catholicism, as the church admits.
But this
the
man
church
has a black
said that
face.
Black face, black everything.
If you strip him, it's black all the way down except his fingernails and all those things like that.
Well, how do I know you just didn't get a picture and paint a black face on it?
No, that is the statue in Rome. That you're looking at.
Now? No, at the best.
Take a jet.
Can a book?
Take the fastest means and go to Rome and come back. Right and then tell us if it's not. That same picture, I used to teach at Roman Catholic College.
This is there now?
Yes, now. And every pope kisses every pope kisses his toe. They said his toes are worn by the thousand kisses placed there. If the book that I got it from was not that heavy, I would bring it that you see the Pope kissing Pope John the 23rd.
And who is this black guy?
St. Peter, the man that they told you, every black minister, every white minister says, Jesus gave Peter the keys to heaven, which means that no white man, nobody else could enter into heaven unless he come by way of me, the black man. But I hold the keys to heaven.
That's right. And there's no reason why Peter should not open for me. He suffered too then.
What else you got there?
Well, what I have here is some black saints. St. Augustine, some of you say that St. Augustine, St. John Chrysostom, St. Athanasius, and St. Ambrose. Black saints of the church. You have to remember that Christianity is called in Europe and by Europeans as a new religion. Right. It was alien to Europe. Emperor Constantine is the one who decided to take it. He said, I need a religion to unify my empire. With this religion, I could then conquer the world. And he himself was never a Christian until on his dying bed in the year 337 when he became converted to Christianity. But he took it to unify his empire.
But isn't it Augustine, in his unchristian doctrines, he wrote 48 different works. The three most noted in the West is his Confessions, which he specified who he was, and then the Holy City of God, and the last was on Christian doctrines, the fundamental principle for modern Christianity. Three black women, Felicita, Perpetua, and Nymphana, were the first to die for Jesus Christ. Next, and they were from what is today called,
how do you know this?
It's in the documents of the church. And it's in the writing of the church. And was it not Pope Melchizedek, the three African popes of the Roman Catholic Church, Melchizedek, Victor III, and the other one,
Galatius.
Pope Galatius. We have them there. Now, these are church documents. But remember, when there came a time in 1506, after we lost power in Spain, the Africans ruled Spain from 711. We were calling ourselves Moors, M-A-U-E-R-S, then M-O-O-R-S. From 711 until 1485, 774 years, when we built and brought into Europe the university system, building the University of Salamanca, S-A-L-A-M-A-N-C-A in Spain, a copy of the University of Genève from ancient Ghana, which was equally a copy of the University of Sankore in Tombouctou, which the French later called Timbuktu. Now, look, if you want to read it, read Stanley Lane Poe's The Moors in Spain, written in 1887, or Alejandro Macaziza. Read his book in Spanish, The Moors in Spain, and said that even the bath was introduced by those Africans.
You said the bra was introduced by...
The bath was reintroduced because Rome had a bath before, but they stopped because of not understanding the Christian doctrine that the Europeans had embraced. They stopped for over 1,000 years from taking baths. As a matter of fact, I'd like to make mockery of the fact that the Queen Victoria of England boasting of herself being the cleanest woman in all of Europe, taking one bath per month. I have books show you where people were made saints for boasting and never even washed their hands. Saints of the church.
Do you have a copy with dirt with you?
No, I didn't bring too many.
Okay, let me, because you guys are bombarding us with so much. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, my name is Yosef Ben Yekanen. I teach at Cornell University History and Egyptology. I'm an author, former member of the United Nations, graduate with a PhD from Cambridge University in England, a PhD from the University of Barcelona in Spain. That should help. I originally was a civil engineer who turned to anthropology and history with a law degree and practiced law. Now, black people had to know a little bit more to get a job. And I was born in Ethiopia and came to the Caribbean as a young fellow at age 6. My mother's a Puerto Rican, and we lived and grew up in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. My father was a barrister. And I, as I said, worked with the United Nations, and then finally started teaching at Columbia University and other places. Got fired a number of times, of course.
I would imagine so.
So yes, with this kind of thing, they don't want, with the documents in my hand. When I exposed that Planned Parenthood was nothing new, that it was done in Africa as early as 1550, I was fired on the spot by Professor Ralph Linton. But about 10 years later, the American Medical Association published the Evers Papyrus, the same thing I got fired for.
Yeah, I want to get back to something in one of your books in a minute, but just tell us, our audience at home and studio audience, a little bit about yourself, Dr.
Oh, I'm not as fortunate as Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben is the intellectual, so I like to be the other extreme. I like to say that my college is that of hard knocks, and I use myself as the example as to how high a black man could come from mother wit. Mother wit in the sense that it is said that blacks are not intelligent. And so that what we do is complement each other. He being the extreme with all the degrees, and I will remain the little fellow in the street. However, the little fellow in the street have taught at some of your best colleges and taught the professors so that they could teach you. I've taught at Marist College. I've lectured for Yale. I have lectured in most of your best institutions. I just went to do a week seminar out in the state of Washington to educate some professors how to teach in teaching and teaching logic. I think what happened, like some people say, well, Simmons, why don't you go and get the thing? I said, no, at my age, I'm not looking for prestige, but my children will. And since there's a thing that black people are dumb, I like to sit back being dumb and just waste the intellectual other folks away.
Well, he's being very modest.
I'm looking for that.
He's my associate in my office.
That's all right.
And yes, and at Malcolm King College, and was the chairman of the Department of History in many schools, so he's being modest.
Let's get back to some of this. Let me see that for a minute. Let's get back to some of this stuff we were talking about last night, you were talking about at dinner. You guys just took on the Bible.
And which one? There are many Bibles. You got about 3,000 versions. And the one that most people here believe in is the King James Version. And when a version is not a fact, a version is something like the original. And James commissioned 47 men under Sir Francis Bacon. He pulled them from Cambridge University, Oxford University, University of Eton, and University of Scotland at Glasgow. Those 47 men wrote God's words.
You're not going to be very popular in this area.
I didn't plan to be.
Okay. This quote from one of your books, and this will be available to our studio audience, and we'll talk about this a little bit after we get off the air. And I'm not even sure I should read this. This is from a Bible.
That's the Bible in this. You should read it. Read what was in Genesis up until the 6th century. It is still in the Book of Mormons. That's the people in Salt Lake City, which many blacks have joined because they'll join the Ku Klux Klan as the open membership. It is still in the Calvinist teaching in South Africa, and read what was in the Bible up until the 6th century.
So you're saying that this is still in the Mormon Bible?
It's still in the Mormon Bible. It is still in the Calvinist Bible, and they look at the bottom where the Roman Catholic Church had it, and they now make an excuse that they were sorry that it was ever in there, but nevertheless it was.
All right, let me just share this with our audience here and our audience at home. And this is from one of Dr. Ben's books.
And from all the books, that it's on page 120 and 21 in that book.
Let me just share a little bit of it here, because I want to get some reaction from you, and it's something for folks to think about. And you said this is from a Bible. Therefore, it must be Canaan, your firstborn, whom they enslave. And I'm just starting in the kind of the middle because there's a lot of it here. And since you have disabled me, doing ugly things in blackness of night, Canaan's children shall be born ugly and black. Moreover, because you twisted your head around to see my nakedness, your grandchildren's hair shall be twisted into kinks, and their eyes red. Again, because your lips jested at my misfortune, theirs shall swell. And because you neglected my nakedness, they shall go naked. And the rest of this stuff is underlined. And this is a quote from the book. Bible, you say. And their male members shall be shamefully elongated. Men of this race are called Negroes. Their forefather Canaan commanded them to love theft and fornication, to be banded together in hatred of their masters, and never to tell the truth.
That's right. It was in the Judeo-Christian Bible until the 6th century of the Christian era, also called AD, Anno Domini. And some black ministers refer to it. Just a few weeks ago in New York, I was listening to my radio on one of these religious programs sponsored by a liquor store. And it says, the minister says that these young blacks are acting up. We shouldn't act up anyhow because when we die and we go to heaven, we're going to be white anyhow. So we say anything. Remember that we did not know that Christianity came from Egypt, and that the first monastery was on the island of Philae, which is still there now, and that the Christianity went into Ethiopia and all of North Africa, where they had 7 patriarchs and 27 bishops before the first one in Greece or Rome. We knew nothing about that. We didn't know. Up to now, you got black people sending missionaries to Africa, not knowing that the Coptic church is older than the Roman church. We still send missionaries. We still tell lies about Africans eating the missionaries. I wish we did eat the missionaries, then we would have had no problem. But we still got that. We still got roots. People thinking that roots has had something to do with history when the man says a novel. People naming their children Kente Conte and Conte Kente and all kind of thing now. But these people...
You take issue with that? You find something wrong?
Yeah, it's garbage. It has nothing to do with history. It's a novel.
Roots, the most popular television show in the history
Amos and Andy was the most popular radio show. And it had nothing to do with black people. It was 2 white Jews. You know, as I told you, the worst part of our enslavement is not the shackle on the hand. It's the shackle on the mind. What we have been conditioned. Look, remember this, that the slave master doesn't train his slave to be free. We once used to train ourselves when we had such things as the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African Baptist Church, the African newspaper. Frederick Douglass, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and all these different people had churches where they taught the people their own history. Look, go into our churches and find out, do they sing the spirituals anymore? No. They got anthems from Scotland, from Germany. They don't sing the songs of the African people anymore in the churches.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with, how does a song from Europe, from Scotland relate to you? You're Scottish? You could have fooled me. But you see, this is the whole thing.
Suppose that we just, not all of it, just suppose we believe half of what you said here tonight. What difference is it going to make?
Quite a lot of difference. Your behavior.
What difference?
The behavior of the child. If you tell a child that all his ancestors and all his people before him ever was, and you prove it to him by not showing him anything that his people did, why would he feel good? When you got busing now, everybody's been fighting for busing. So the bus goes, you show me one bus bringing one white kid from a white neighborhood into a black neighborhood to study. All the buses go from the black neighborhood to the white neighborhood. Show me a class in music appreciation where they're showing you African music. It is European music alone. Now, it has an impact on the child. The problem that we are facing is that I say, you ask what's different, okay. In the church tomorrow, they're going to be a church, and every one of the black churches got a white Jesus. Go into a Chinese church and see if you don't see Jesus got slit eye like a Chinese. Go, you know what I mean? Go to everybody but us. Religion is the deification of a culture. And the gods look like the people talking about it. And the angels. Here you got Jesus. Now give me, if you talk about image. December the 25th, coming. You're going to see this, and before. Jesus wrapped with swaddling bands. It says it. Wool. We're in the desert now. It's 110 degrees minimum Fahrenheit. We're in the desert, and the child is wrapped in swaddling bands, the wool. What mother's going to wrap her child in a wool blanket in the desert? Let's go further. And on the roof of the manger, there is snow. If you give your daughter an icicle and then tell her, take it back and put it in the oven with 110 degrees Fahrenheit and go back to expect to find an icicle, you're going to find running hot water. But that image is in our head. This is a European version that was painted by Michelangelo for Pope Julius II in 1509 in the Sistine Chapel. He finished in 1511. An image, one picture that says worth 1,000 words. Now you have three wise men in the middle of the desert. One is from Africa. One is black, they said. I mean, how this possible? Moses born in Egypt, and they showed me the book. He was born in Africa. Another one. The angel of the Lord, wait now, the angel of the Lord come to Mary and said to Mary, carry the little boy and hide him among his cousin in Egypt, because Herod wants to kill him, right? She comes and takes this child to Africa. Egypt is in Africa. Hid him among his cousins. He's blonde, he's blue-eyed, and he got golden hair. And he's hidden among a bunch of black kids. The army came, the navy came, everybody searched every house and can't find that boy.
God, time's moving on, and there's so much here. Okay, let me just throw this at you. I'm sure you've offended a lot of people's religion. There are those who would say, or sure I'm thinking, or sure I'm sure they're thinking. So what you're saying is just a lot of racist garbage.
Well, they will say, reverse racist. They don't allow us to be plain racist. We have to be different. We're the reverse kind. Now, people will say anything, and even black people will say we will control our mind, our thinking. The point is this, that the person said, have never read anything hardly. Let us go into the theologian library and see the amount of books they have. How many of these people have gone and traveled? You see, what I'm saying, there is no major university, no major library in Europe I have never been to. There's no major library in Asia or Africa I have never been to. I have been to every one of the major tombs and temples of Egypt and got the pictures and read the hieroglyphs and everything like that.
You even said you discovered England. Tell people
I discovered England when I was, the first time I went to England, I discovered it. I was in the middle of London walking around, doing like this, looking around, and the Bobby, that's the policeman, he came and he says, what you doing? I said, I'm discovering England. He says, you must be deaf. You know what that means, crazy in English. And England have always been here. I says, well, I'm doing it Columbus. I just came here. I'm the first of my people to come, so I got to discover it. They discover everything that they came to, isn't it? They discovered the source of the Nile, while the African brought them, showed them the source of the Nile. Africans there having a nice bath, naked. Naked, we were bathing very naked, because what we got to hide? We were naked.
But you claim that Africans invented the brassiere.
Yeah, but the fact that they invented the brassiere as a string for the purpose of keeping the breast from jumping up and down. I mean, you know, kids, it causes young men to burn when they see that. But the thing is, as I was listening to Dr. Ben speaking about the European discovery, I thought about going to the moon, that the Europeans have not changed. Up to today, he still operates that way. Wherever he goes, the first thing he does is plant a flag. When the United States sent men to the moon, they didn't care if there were moon people up there. The first thing they did is put that flag. This belongs to us, and the Bible.
I'm ready to kill for it.
Okay, putting aside charges of reversed racism, you guys are chomping at the beliefs of a lot of black folk. I mean, at dinner, you shook up some people when you said that, talked about black preachers.
Yeah, but let me just ask you this. I mean, let's just say this.
All right.
People believe, unfortunately, most black people here believe that the only religion black people ever had was Christianity or Judaism or Islam. They forget that the first known religion was the worship of Ptah, P-T-A-H, along the Nile. There was no Adam and Eve mentioned any place yet because there was no Judaism. And if there's no Judaism, there's no book of Genesis.
But you went so far as to say that the virgin birth, Adam and Eve, Noah,
were all repetition, and they could read the works of...
You said they're myths.
They're myths. All religion is myths. Religion is based upon belief.
There are people who would bet their lives if Jesus was born.
There are people who are dying to go into cemeteries. But that doesn't make things stop. The way we were taught as if there was no other religion but Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. There were religions, and our religion way older than Judaism and Christianity and Islam.
Let me jump
that
to this
the Africans did. The religion of the worship of Olodumare, for example, among the Yoruba, is more than 2,000 years older than Christianity.
Right, let me get to this because I see time is creeping up on us. We were sitting around the dinner table, some students and people, and question came to you both. The way you sound, you guys may not believe in God or something.
I am married to an ex-nun, an ex-Roman Catholic nun. I drive her to 35 years we've been married a few days ago, and I drive her to church on occasion. I'll go in and listen. I'll go to the mosque. I'll go to the Buddhist temple. I go to anybody's religion because religion is a belief. Nobody has it. Now, you ask if I believe in God, you must first explain, because I met the guy that robbed my house, believed in God. He had a big cross on his chest when they caught him down at the precinct. He believed that didn't stop him from robbing my house. Believing in God don't make you good or bad. The Ku Klux Klan believe in God. The one thing that they say that they have established a religion to protect the name of Jesus. So read the whole philosophy. Most of the people in the Bible Belt will cut your throat for being black. Did the Bible stop them from being racist? No. That don't mean a thing because you believe. You believe and your behavior are two different things. And people ask, you believe in God, you don't believe in God. So what that means? It doesn't mean I won't cut your throat.
Okay, but you said earlier that if we stop paying black preachers tomorrow morning,
the church will close. How many of them come in to do volunteer work? It's a business. It's a salary people get out of it, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, or what.
Christianity and religion as we know it is a business?
Big business.
Biggest business is bigger than IT&T.
You get all kinds of tax breaks and all kinds of privileges when you're a minister.
His salary is paid. You think the Pope would be there if he didn't get a big salary? He would get the biggest salary of all. Do you think, no, let's face it, how many ministers you know doing it for free? Just tell me.
Okay, this is
if you don't pay your 10% tithing and see how, if you're going to get buried, then leave your corpse right. It may come to the undertaker parlor and say, if you want, but you're not coming to the cemetery. You sing in the choir all you want and go get married and see if you have to pay.
What are we to learn from all this? How are we to change our lives? Or how would it change our lives in the better, can it?
No, I am not against anyone believing in a God system. To the contrary, I do believe in a God system. A system. But what I'm against is that for African people, and by the way, you're Africans, you know, you may not know that, but just remember, if you get a rabbit and put it in an oven, and the next day you go in and they has little ones, you don't call them biscuits. And if Africans come to America and got little babies, they're Africans. Okay, I know you don't like that when you look in the mirror because you can't think you're an African. But anyhow, I have no objection at all. My children, I have a daughter who's a Jehovah's Witness. I have...
Does that bother you?
No, it don't bother me because I train my children. And I know what they believe and don't believe. And in fact, of her being a Jehovah's Witness, when problems strike, it's Big Daddy they're coming to. I know that. And my daughter was trained to be intelligent. that you don't pray to stop getting pregnant. You have to do something about that. You gotta go either to the drugstore or a gynecologist. You pray all you want. If you're having a man, the praying will stop the pregnancy. You understand? But birth control will. Okay, the pill will help. Now, that's reality. I'm not going to tell my daughter, no, you believe in God, if you've got a man, pray, and the boy will make you pregnant.
Okay, but I can think of a specific example. People who may be physically ill would not go to the doctor. I'm thinking of one particular instance that I know about.
Right.
Lady would not go to the doctor because she said she'd rather be in church.
She's going to die soon. I do not want a minister when I get hit by a car. I want a specialist in bones.
Well, let me take you for a moment. Use myself for an example. I was bleeding to death. I was going to die. I was losing blood faster than the doctors could give. And they said, we must operate. And there comes a priest to say something over me, whatever it is. I told him, I don't need him. I don't need him. I want a doctor.
That's right. That's intelligence.
He's standing in the way of the doctors. They need to work in me.
It doesn't mean that he doesn't believe in God. It means that he's intelligent.
And this is
because the priest want the same doctor. If the priest had an accident and the doctor comes up and another priest come up, and when he look and he has a ruptured aorta or something like that, you think he's going to tell the guy, pray man, I need that, and tell the doctor, go and tell the doctor, get me to the hospital. When you go to the hospital, how many priests, ministers you will see lying up there getting treated? Because they got sense. You know what I mean? It isn't irreligious or godly for me to say, I fell down and broke my leg, and then say, Father, straighten it out. You know what the Bible said? I will help those who help themselves. What the Bible could be used for negative and positive. It's got all kind of negative and positive. The whole thing is your interpretation of it. You go to 15 Baptist church and you get 15 back. Why tell me now, if it's religion, that you got one block 200 feet long and got 6 Baptist church in there? The same Baptist denomination. Tell me why, if you're a Christian, why you need a Methodist, a Baptist, a Presbyterian, a Catholic, and it's the same Jesus.
Why?
Money. Big business. Everybody wants to run their thing. If I get 10% from you, 10% for the next guy, 10% of $70,000 a year is good. I mean, I could get a few Cadillacs behind that, and a nice home, and a nice wife with a mink coat, and you see some people taking the last dollar and giving to the church, and they come and ask me for my dollar.
Let me just, because I've been informed that we have about, I guess, less than 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. We've covered a lot of subjects. We've had a lot of questions. And I guess in just maybe a minute summary, each of you, I mean, we hear about this stuff maybe once a month, Black History Month, and we go back for the other 11, living our lives, being bombarded with other kinds of information. What can we take from here, and what can we do with it, and how can it help us? I mean, that's a multifaceted question, but if you can, let me start with you, Doc.
What I would say is that I would advise anyone to start reading and researching on their own, because I don't know of any school that educates. I've been trying to find a school that does. And all of them, as far as I find out, all they do is train people to be a bunch of regurgitators. So I say to my students that you have to go out and take that training that you receive and then make it work for the benefit of yourself and your people, and then you show me that you are one who are now happen to be an educated individual. So you have to keep reading, and it will benefit you in the long run.
Well, is there any value to what we've been doing here for the last hour?
Yes, because now we have brought a tremendous amount of new information, hopefully, to light, and other people will start trying to check us out, and then they too will become enlightened. We hope that they do try to prove us wrong.
But you probably also offended a lot of folks.
Well, look, new knowledge does. If someone tells you that your girlfriend that you love so well is a prostitute, and you've never seen her prostituting, it's shocking. And if you catch her, you really can't believe it. You might even kill the guy for telling you. So I'm not surprised if it hurts, because when you start to change or deal with people's belief patterns that they have held on so dearly to, and many have even offered to fight, give up their lives for their belief, only to find that the belief is an untruth.
Okay, we just have a minute left, and I know that's not a lot of time, but final statement on your part, Dr. Ben.
God is truth, they said, and truth is a constant effort of research. There is no limit to truth, and one must look constantly to find truth. I've traveled this entire world. I didn't sit one spot and read one book. I went to thousands of libraries over the age. I'm 64, and I've been from 1938. I have been doing research in the area of African people.
Do you think you've been making any progress, making any difference in people's lives?
Progress is a relative thing. It all depends on what you're equating from what point to where.
Okay, we only got 30 seconds left, so yes?
No, we haven't made any progress if you look at percentage-wise. And the college campus we are now, professors, let's say, where we got 5 professors and 1,000 students. One time we had no professor and 100 students. It doesn't make any difference. The percentage is worse now.
Okay, we're out of time, and we want to thank those of you at home and those of you.
Here on Channel 13, we presented a 5-part series which we called The Hate That Hate Produced. A study of the rise of black racism, of a call for black supremacy among a small but growing segment of the American Negro population. And tonight, because of the considerable interest evoked by the serialized version, we are repeating this disturbing story with additional film sequences which we did not have time to use last week. And then after the documentary portion of the program, Dr. Anna Hedgeman, former administrative assistant to Mayor Robert Wagner, Arnold Forster of the Anti-Defamation League, Jackie Robinson, former Brooklyn Dodger star and now columnist for the New York Post, Roy Wilkins, executive secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the Reverend Dr. Gardner Taylor, president of the Protestant Council of Greater New York. 5 people with a particular and immediate interest in race relations will talk about what can be done about the tide of racism among this segment of the Negro population. So now, the hate that hate produced. While city officials, state agencies, white liberals, and sober-minded Negroes stand idly by, a group of Negro dissenters is taking to street corner step ladders, church pulpits, sports arenas, and ballroom platforms across the United States to preach a gospel of hate that would set off a federal investigation if it were preached by Southern whites. What are they saying? Listen.
I charge the white man with being the greatest liar on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest drunkard on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest swine eater on earth. Yet the Bible forbids it. I charge the white man with being the greatest gambler on earth. I charge the white man, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, with being the greatest murderer on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest peace breaker on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest adulterer on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest robber on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest deceiver on earth. I charge the white man with being the greatest troublemaker on earth. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you, bring back a verdict of guilty as charged.
The indictment you have just heard is being delivered over and over again in most of the major cities across the country. This charge comes at the climax of a morality play called The Trial. The plot, indeed the message of the play, is that the white man has been put on trial for his sins against the black man. He has been found guilty. The sentence is death. The play is sponsored, produced by a Negro religious group who call themselves the Muslims. They use a good deal of the paraphernalia of the traditional religion of Islam, but they are fervently disavowed by Orthodox Muslims. These homegrown Negro American Muslims are the most powerful of the black supremacist groups. They now claim a membership of at least 250,000 Negroes. Their doctrine is being taught in 50 cities across the nation. Let no one underestimate the Muslims. They have their own parochial schools, like this one in Chicago, where Muslim children are taught to hate the white man. Even the clothes they wear are in sharp contrast to American dress, like these two Negro children going to school. Wherever they go, the Muslims withdraw from the life of the community. They have their own stores, supermarkets, barbershops, restaurants. Here you see a progressive, modern, air-conditioned Muslim department store on Chicago's South Side. Their story of hatred for the white man is carried in many Negro newspapers. Here you see their minister, Malcolm X, proudly displaying 5 of the biggest Negro papers in America. Papers published in Los Angeles, New York, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Newark. Negro politicians, regardless of their private beliefs, listen when the leaders of the black supremacist movement speak. Here you see Manhattan Borough President Hewlin Jack shaking hands with Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Muslims. And here is City Councilman Earl Brown addressing a Muslim rally. 4 or 5 times a year, the Muslims assemble in one of America's major cities to hear their leader, Elijah Muhammad. This coming Sunday afternoon, they will gather at New York's St. Nicholas Arena to hear him. But here, you see them arriving at Washington's Uline Arena for a meeting they held just 6 weeks ago. Every devout Muslim is eager to attend these meetings. For some time between now and 1970, and at just such a rally as this, the Muslim leader has intimated that he will give the call for the destruction of the white man. As you will see, every precaution is taken to protect their leader at these meetings. The Muslims, both men and women, submit themselves to a complete search before they finally enter the meeting hall. Some 10,000 persons attended the rally that you see here. All of them were searched. That's a search going on here. This process began 3 hours before the meeting started. And shortly, you will see Elijah Muhammad, founder and spiritual leader of the group. His flock is waiting for him now. And finally, here comes their spiritual leader, Elijah Muhammad. He's actually Elijah Poole of Hawkinsville, Georgia. During World War II, Muhammad was arrested and charged with sedition and draft dodging. The Department of Justice finally dropped the charge that he had advocated defeat of the white democracies and victory for the colored Japanese. But Muhammad and his followers did serve time in the federal penitentiary for refusing to register for the draft. Here you will hear Elijah Muhammad introduced by Minister Malcolm X, the Muslims' New York leader and ambassador at large for the movement. The good news that Minister X talks about here is the coming rise of the black man and the fall of the white man.
Everyone who is here today realizes that we are now living in the fulfillment of prophecy. Right. We have come to hear and to see the greatest and the wisest and most fearless black man in America today. Right. In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." Is that right or wrong? But what we must bear in mind, that what's good news to one person is bad news to another. While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what's good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. Right. What's good news for the sheep might be bad news to the wolf.
The good news for the black man is that he is on the verge of recapturing his position as ruler of the universe. The bad news for the white man is that his long and wicked reign will shortly be over. And following this introduction, Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Muslims, speaks.
The Christian religion has failed. Your leaders thought that religion has failed. Now the government of America has failed you. You have no justice coming from no one. Right. Whereas it is written, like sheep among wolves. Every word taken up by that. You want death. You want freedom. You want equality. But that's not.
Following this speech, which lasted some 2 hours, Newsbeat reporter Louis Lomax interviewed Elijah Muhammad, the spiritual leader of the Muslims.
Although you have said that the white race is doomed and that they are a race of devils, do you make any distinction? Are there any good white people? For example, suppose I were to ask you who you think is the best white man. Is there any such thing?
Let the Bible answer that. He says, no, not one is good.
Now, if I have understood your teachings correctly, you teach that all of the members of Islam are God, and that one among you is supreme, and that that one is Allah. Now, have I understood you correctly?
That's right.
Now, you have on the other hand said that Allah has taught you that the devil is the white man, that the white man is a doomed race.
Yes.
Am I correct there?
Yes.
Now you have said, sir, that between now and approximately 1970, there should come a reawakening,
a general resurrection
of the American Negro.
That's right.
And that the extended time for the white man may well run out, and that will come, and in terms of a war between God and the devil, this coming destruction of the white man. Will there be any bloodshed involved in this, or will it be a complete mental thing?
According to the teachings of the prophets of old and of God himself, there will be plenty of bloodshed. Plenty of it.
Have you ever been accused, sir, of preaching hate?
Yes.
Do you think you are preaching hate?
No.
What are you preaching, sir?
Truth.
And if the truth is irritable or objectionable,
classified as hate, then I cannot help that.
But of even more interest to New Yorkers is Malcolm X, the Muslims' New York minister. He is a remarkable man, a man who, by his own admission, was once a procurer and dope peddler. He served time for robbery in the Michigan and Massachusetts state penitentiaries. But now he's a changed man. He will not smoke or drink. He will not even eat in a restaurant that houses a tavern. He told Newsbeat that his life changed for him when the Muslim faith taught him no longer to be ashamed of being a black man. Reporter Louis Lomax asked Minister Malcolm X to further explain the Muslim teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
That in the same context that Mr. Elijah Muhammad teaches that his faith, that the Islamic faith is for the black man and that the black man is good. He also uses the Old Testament instance of the serpent and Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and he sets up the proposition there that this is the great battle between good and evil, and he uses the phrase devils.
Yes.
And he uses it almost interchangeably and synonymous with the word snake. Now what does he mean there?
Well, number one, he teaches us that that never was a real serpent.
It was not a real serpent
that went into the garden.
What was it?
But as you know, the Bible is written in symbols and parables, and this serpent or snake is a symbol that's used to hide the real identity of the one whom that actually was.
Well, who was it?
The white man.
I want to call your attention, Minister Malcolm, to one paragraph in this column. He says, and I quote him, "The only people born of Allah are the black nation, of whom the so-called American Negroes are descendants."
Yes.
Now, is this your standard teaching?
Yes. He teaches us that the black man by nature is divine.
Now, does this mean that the white man by nature is evil?
By nature, he is other divine.
Well, now, does this mean that he's evil? Can he do good?
By nature, he is evil.
He cannot do good.
History is best qualified to reward all research, and we don't have any historic example where we have found that they collectively, as a people, have done good.
Minister Malcolm, You now in Chicago and in Detroit have universities of Islam, do you not?
Yes, sir, in Detroit and Chicago.
And you take your parishioners, you take children from the kindergarten ages, and you train them right through high school.
Yes, sir. From the age of 4, I think it is, upward.
And you have a certified parochial school operating in Chicago?
In Chicago
and in Detroit.
And in Detroit.
And kids come to your school in lieu of going to what we would call regular day school?
Yes, sir, many.
What do you teach them there?
We teach them the same things that they would be taught ordinarily in school, minus the little black Sambo story and things that were taught to you and me when we were coming up to breed that inferiority complex in us.
Do you teach them what you just said to me, that the white man is a symbol of evil?
You can go to any little Muslim child and ask him where is hell or who is the devil, and he wouldn't tell you that hell is down in the ground or that the devil is something invisible that you can't see. He'll tell you hell is right where he has been catching it, and he'll tell you who the one who is responsible for him having received this hell is the devil.
And he would say that this devil is the white man?
Yes.
Can a white man join your temple?
None have ever joined.
If one came up and attempted to join, would he be allowed to come in and be taught?
No, sir.
Why not?
Well, that's one of the reasons why most people think that Mr. Muhammad teaches hate. But if there is a rattlesnake in the field who has been biting your brothers and your sisters, and you go and tell them that that's a rattlesnake, and all of the harm that has ever come to them has come to them from that particular source, well, then that rattler will think that the warner is teaching hate. He'll go back and tell the other snakes that this man is teaching hate, this man is teaching hate, but it's not hate. It's just that when you study people who have been harmed and discover the source of their injury, the source of all of their defects, and you begin to point out that source, it's not that you hate the source, but your love for your people is so intense, so great, that you must let them know what is wrong with them, what is the cause of their ills. And this is one of the basic factors, I believe, involved when people think, or when the propaganda is put out that Mr. Muhammad teaches hate. He teaches black people to love each other. And our love for each other is so strong, we don't have any room left in our heart.
What do you think of the NAACP?
Islam is a natural religion, and it is difficult to find a black body with a white head and classify that body as something that's natural. Most organizations that represent the so-called Negro, usually we find when we study them that though they are supposed to be for us the leadership or the brain power or the political power or whatever power that runs it, usually it's the white man.
We have thus seen Muslim leaders in reflective moments and as they talk to members of their own flock. But what about their approach to non-Muslim Negroes? 3 months ago, Minister Malcolm X was invited to speak at a Harlem rally celebrating African Freedom Day. His audience was composed chiefly of Christian Negroes with a lively interest in African affairs. We've obtained film segments of that speech. The film was made under adverse circumstances, but you will be able to hear and understand Minister Malcolm X as he addresses a non-Muslim audience.
Who is his enemy? He'll say the Belgians. Ask the man in Kenya who is his enemy. He'll say the British. Ask the man in Morocco who is his enemy. He'll say the French. But the one thing that the French and the British and the Belgians all have in common, they're all from Europe. Is that right or wrong? How could so few white people rule so many black people? This is the thing you should want to know. How could so few? The white man today will tell you that thousands of years ago, the black man in Africa was living in palaces. The black man in Africa was wearing silk. The black man in Africa was cooking and seasoning his food. The black man in Africa Africa had mastered the arts and the sciences. He knew the course of the stars in the universe before the man up in Europe knew that the earth wasn't flat. Is that right or wrong?
Earth is flat, nothing. Earth is flat.
Then if the black man in Africa had reached such a high state of civilization so long ago, at a time when the people of Europe were crawling on their all fours, what happened to make these people or enable these people to come out of the cave and come down into our civilization and take it over and hitch us to the plow? What happened? How did they do it? These are the things you should want to find out before you say hooray, hooray, hooray. Is that right or wrong?
This is the psychology of the Muslims. They know that the American Negro is angry because he's been cast in an inferior role. And they seek to convert him to the Muslim cause by drenching him in a doctrine of black supremacy. These then are the Muslims. These are the things they are saying, preaching, teaching their children. And they are the most powerful of the black supremacist groups. But now, let us look at another group. Every night when the weather is good, knots of people gather in Harlem at 125th Street and 7th Avenue in front of the Teresa Hotel to hear the speakers for the United African Nationalist Movement spread their gospel of black nationalism. We made a film of one of those meetings. The lighting was poor. It was difficult to get good sound quality. The man you're about to hear is John Davis, a paid orator for the United African Nationalist Movement. You will hear him attack white liberals, Eleanor Roosevelt, Pearl Buck, and then he'll go on to say some rather surprising things about the NAACP and its leader, Roy Wilkins.
I tell it to you like it is. And now you got what they call so-called white liberals. That's supposed to be your friend. And these white liberals go around claiming that they are against discrimination. They are against lynching. They are not in favor of all the brutality. Liberals like phony Miss Roosevelt, the African white goddess. Is that right or wrong? I give it to you like it is. Oh, you got another one by the name of Pearl Buck. And what's this woman that wrote Imitation of Life? Fanny Life. Ah, them phony liberals. I'll tell you like it is. Then you got the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Some Colored Folk. And you got Uncle Tom, Roy Wilkins. Am I right or wrong? Yeah.
The leader of the United African Nationalist Movement is James R. Lawson, sometimes public relations man and black nationalist, a man who says he has authorization to bring greetings from the United Arab Republic's President Nasser to black nationalist groups here in America. Newsbeat asked Mr. Lawson to explain the nature of his organization and its aims. As Lawson talks with reporter Lomax, you will see the strong pro-Arab feeling that pervades the teachings of the black racists.
This is the United African Nationalist Movement. It is an organization of people of African descent here in America. However, we have associated organizations throughout the Caribbean, Africa, and the Middle East. Can a non-African or non-Negro person join your organization? No, he cannot. Why not? Because this is an organization of people of African blood or descent. Are you anti-white? Well, I think you ought to ask white people who are anti-black. But are you anti-white? I don't think I'm anti-white, but I'm pro-black. I have here the March 12, 1859 edition of the Los Angeles Herald Dispatch, a Negro newspaper. On the front page, there's an article, the title of which says, Negro nationalist James R. Lawson, and that's you, guest of Muhammad. It has a Chicago dateline. And it goes on to say that you delivered greetings to Mr. Elijah Muhammad on the occasion of his third Founders Day in Chicago. Is this report accurate? I delivered greetings not to Mr. Muhammad, but to the convention gathered there people under leadership. You spoke to the gathering of the Muslim group in Chicago. That's right. Did you bring them greetings from General Nasser of Egypt?
Also from President Tubman of Liberia.
But you did bring them greetings from General Nasser?
Sure.
Did General Nasser know that you were bringing greetings from him to this group?
He knows I bring greetings not only to this group, but to many groups, not only on behalf of him, but on behalf of President Tubman, sometimes on behalf of Emperor Haile Selassie. Any group of people gathered of African descent.
Did General Nasser recently invite you to come to Egypt as his guest?
Certainly.
Are you going?
I may.
Have made up your mind one way or the other?
I've just about made up my mind. I'm not ready to announce it, though.
But you have made up your mind?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that Nasser is the leader in Africa?
In that part of Africa, yes.
Are you
many leaders in Africa?
Are you eager to help Nasser?
I'm eager to help anybody that will help in bringing about the freedom of Africa.
You are only once having said that you didn't ask Nasser to help you, that you wanted to help Nasser.
That is true. I want to help not only Nasser, but
what do you want to help Nasser do?
Free Africa.
From what?
Colonialism. White domination.
Do you favor integration?
No.
Do you favor the NAACP?
No.
Do you think Roy Wilkins is a good leader of his people?
Roy Wilkins is not the leader. Arthur Spingarn is the leader.
And what is Arthur Spingarn?
A Zionist Jew.
Mr. Lawson, were you present at the meeting when Dr. Ralph Bunche of the United Nations got up to introduce Prime Minister Nkrumah?
Sure I was. Don't you remember you ran up to me and asked me a question? I was with my family, my wife and 2 children.
But as I recall the incident, Dr. Bunche was roundly booed when he stood up. Is that correct?
That is true.
Mr. Lawson, who booed Ralph Bunche and why?
I think the people booed him. That's what it looked like to me.
Do you know any of the people who...
Sure.
Do you know why they booed him?
I don't know exactly why, but I have a hunch.
What's your hunch say?
My hunch is that the black people, those of African descent in this country, consider Ralph Bunche a kind of George Washington of Israel. The man who made 1 million people that are closely related to them homeless and hasn't done a cockeyed thing for the black man.
Now, you say the black people believe that. Do you, James R. Lawson, believe that Ralph Bunche is the George Washington of Israel?
Well, I know he is.
So speaks James Lawson, president of the United African Nationalist Movement. One of the rallying cries of these black extremists is the alleged failure of Christianity. They call it a doctrine of enslavement. Many of them have abandoned Christianity, and those who haven't abandoned it preach that Jesus was not white. Not white like the men who lynch Negroes, but that he was black. We'll be back to continue the hate that hate produced with the treatment of the black racists' attitudes towards Christianity in just a moment after these commercial messages. And now back to our story. These black supremacists, Muslims and black nationalists, are not practitioners of hate just for hate's sake. They did not grow in a vacuum. Rather, theirs is the hate that hate has produced. The hate that some Negroes are returning for the hate most American Negroes have received for the past 300 years. The burden of being a black man in America has proved more than some of them can bear. And so now they are fighting back with the same weapons that were used to subjugate them. They're finding it, some of them, increasingly difficult to identify with America. They've lost faith in the honesty of American law enforcement agencies when it comes to protecting their individual rights. Many of them have abandoned Christianity and have named it a dogma of enslavement. Even those who have not abandoned it are preaching that Jesus was not white, like the men who lynch and discriminate against Negroes, but that he was a black man. James Lawson shows the black supremacists' concept of Jesus. And notice how much the Jesus in the painting and James Lawson resemble one another.
Mr. Lawson, in conjunction with your remarks that the Negro needs a black God, or at least some image he can identify with, I wonder if you tell me what this picture is and what it's all about.
Well, we don't mean a black God. We know that God is spirit. But this is a painting, the concept of an artist of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And, Solomon himself said, "Look not upon me because I am black and comely." And somewhere else it was quoted, I think in Revelation, where it says, his hair is like a lamb's wool and his feet like polished brass. Therefore, we feel that we're on sound ground when we refer to Jesus as possibly being a black man. After all, Jesus was of the tribe of Judea.
The American Negro has never quite forgotten that he became a slave and a Christian at the same time. For a good many of them, this is something they feel deeply but don't often talk about. But for the Muslims and the black nationalists, the alleged failure of Christianity is an obsession. And they talk bitterly of this alleged failure to power their cause. Listen to John Davis, paid orator for the United African Nationalist Movement, as he sets the theme. He begins by talking of a sleeping child. And then he talks of Mac Parker, the Negro who was lynched recently in Mississippi. And he calls for an end to the brainwashing imposed by the Christian religion.
You are still a sleeping child. And you'll be all right as soon as they get religion out of you. When they take this religion out of you and brainwash you about this Jesus and this hereafter, you'll be all right. Do you know that Matthew Parker's mother believed in God, but she believed in the wrong God? That's how come Mac is dead. If Mac C. Parker's mother, now remember, I didn't say for you not to believe in God. I said get this white man's religion out of you.
But it is Elijah Muhammad, spiritual leader of the white-hating Muslims, who make the bitterest attacks on Christianity. And it might be well to point out again here that traditional Muslims fervently disavow Elijah Muhammad's homegrown brand of Islam. The Orthodox Muslim is quick to affirm that there is no hate in his religion, and that man of whatever color or nationality is welcome in his faith.
That is a white man's religion. It is not for you and I. There is no salvation in Christianity for life. It has failed to give you justice. Regardless to your preachers and your church pleading to the government for justice, you get none. Regardless to your prayers for the Father and the Son, you get no justice. All right, dear Father. Then what good is Christianity to you and I if the religion and the God of that religion will not defend us against wrongs, against lynchers, against rapers?
After the speech in Uline Arena, Elijah Muhammad elaborated on his charges against Christianity for reporter Lomax.
Christians, then? No. Do you think that Christianity is a religion of deliverance for the black man? No. Do you think that Christianity has been a religion of enslavement for the black man? Yes. What do you think of the... It was Christian fathers who enslaved our fathers. They all was Christians. In fact about it, the white race is really the Christians, as we refer to them. I could never be a Christian, though I joined Christianity, but I could never be a Christian unless I was white. You don't think a black man can be a Christian, sir? By nature, we are not Christians. By nature, we are born Muslims. Do you think that faith is our natural faith? It is the natural religion of man, according to the teachings of the Holy One, 30 and 30. Sir, how many so-called American Negroes have you been able to convert during the years of your teaching? Oh, that runs into hundreds of thousands. But that don't mean they all have continued to follow on with it. But there has been hundreds of thousands taught.
Thus, the story is told, a small but growing segment of the American Negro population has learned to hate before the Christian white man could learn to love. But what do Negro Christian leaders say? Do they too believe that Christianity has failed the Negro? Is it an instrument of subjugation? Reporter Lomax put these questions to the Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, pastor of the world's largest Protestant congregation.
Do you believe that Christianity, and since you are a Protestant, I will put it in that context, do you believe that Protestantism has been the Negro's friend? Do you think that it has functioned as a religion of deliverance for Negroes, or has it been guilty of dragging its feet, so to speak, on this question?
Well, again, I'd like to say that the words of Jesus weren't aimed at Protestants only. They're aimed at all people, Protestants and Catholics, who believed in Christianity. So I would therefore like to answer your question against that background. I believe that Christianity in the United States has been dragging its feet. I don't think there's any other force in America that has been more detrimental to the solution of our racial problems than Christianity, because you cannot expect the man in the street to practice Christianity better than his priest or his pastor in the pulpit. And the fact that there is more segregation in the United States of America on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock than at any other time in our national life is the tragic proof of what I'm stating.
And so it becomes easier for us to understand why talk of integration has become a kind of wistful pie in the sky for a growing number of Negroes. Easier to understand why they turn to the Muslims, a group they believe will do something for them. Why they lose patience with NAACP talk of gradual integration, when what they want is immediate equality and separation. Is this black supremacist doctrine making headway among New York Negroes? Let's go to the streets of Harlem and find out.
This is classified as hate when we are telling our people that it is time for them to organize and learn to develop respect, recognition for themselves in order that they might obtain a position of self-determination. If this is what is classified as hate, then I suppose I am guilty of preaching such a philosophy.
I've listened to the Elijah Muhammad movement and the Black Nationalist movement, and I have heard the NAACP. And I don't feel that the NAACP's views are the way out. I feel that it would be better if it were more national, rather than integrated with the views of the white man in it, for the simple reason that I think that together with our own people, more can be accomplished, rather than with the white man involved in it also, because as it is, we've already been accepting too many crumbs from this man, and we've never really gotten a real loaf of bread from him.
The only thing I disagree with the NAACP about is that we've been waiting long enough. The Supreme Court handed down a decision in 1954, and we're still waiting for our schools to be integrated in the South. I've read some of Mr. Muhammad's articles in the Pittsburgh Courier. He is a Muslim. I agree with him. He says we've been waiting long enough.
Only recently that the people that have been listening to these speakers have become more tense, to the extent that when they read newspapers about brutality in the South, women are being beat with clubs in Africa. And everywhere you read the headlines, black people are being beat, lynched, killed, for no reason at all. And they began to get nervous about it, and somebody needs to do something, and that is quick.
We asked NAACP Executive Secretary Roy Wilkins if these extremists are involved in the recent racial unrest up in Harlem.
Preaching of racial hatred and racial advantage and the bigotry involved is a bad thing, whether it's colored or white. Now, for years, the NAACP has been opposed to white extremists preaching hatred of Negro people, and we are equally opposed to Negro extremists preaching against white people simply for the sake of whiteness. Now, what effect this has had on the Harlem community, I can't say, because many police incidents have taken place in Harlem, and I believe that a sort of community attitude has been built up. It may be that these extremists have sharpened it, and have recruited some more extremists to their banner? If so, that would be deplorable.
Then we tried to find out what is the political impact, the political strength of these black supremacists. And this is what we discovered. Their influence far outruns their numbers. They're vocal. They get out on the streets and stir up sentiment. During political campaigns, they choose candidates, and their street corner speakers weave political campaigning in and out of their black supremacist teachings. Reporter Lomax asked James Lawson, president of the United African Nationalist Movement, to what extent his group supported such politicians as Congressman Adam Clayton Powell and Manhattan Borough President Jack.
Participate in the politics of Harlem.
Oh, sure.
Do you support candidates actively?
Very seldom.
But on some occasions you do support candidates.
When we feel that the issues are great enough.
Well, I think perhaps Adam Clayton Powell is the best-known politician in Harlem. Have you supported Adam Clayton Powell?
In the last election.
You did support him in the last election?
Yes.
Did you actively support him on the streets?
Yeah.
What does Adam Powell think of you?
Well, you'd have to ask the congressman that.
Has he ever given you any indication what he thinks of you?
Oh, he has.
For example?
Well, he wasn't able to attend the African Freedom Day rally, and he did write a very fine tribute to the United African Nationalist Movement and its leadership.
That's you and your organization?
No, I said the United African Nationalist Movement and its leadership.
Yes.
I happen to be the president.
Yes. Is it true that he recently wrote you a letter in which he indicated what he thought of you personally?
Well, yes. I think it was involving issues, and they were very fine and wonderful phrases come from both the minister and the congressman.
Well, without breaching any confidences, can you tell us in essence what he said about you in the letter he wrote to you?
Well, he said that he felt that the United African Nationalist Movement was doing a great job in the struggle for the liberation of Africa, the program of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. And he felt that many things wouldn't have been done if it wasn't for the existence of this organization.
Now, do you have the same kind of feeling and relationship with regard to Borough President Hewlett Jack?
Yes, yes. I'll tell you the truth. You know, we're all members of the same order.
All members of the same order?
Well, the Order of the Star of Ethiopia.
Did you support Borough President Hewlett Jack in the last election?
Yes.
Should he be a candidate in the coming election, will you support him then?
Oh, we expect him to be a candidate.
And you expect to support him?
We expect not only to support him because we know that many people, after getting the borough presidency away from our people here in Harlem.
Then reporter Lomax asked both Adam Powell and Hewlett Jack about Mr. Lawson's statements.
Mr. Lawson told us that on several occasions he has supported you in your campaigns.
True.
And on one occasion he said he received a letter from you in which you gave him your blessings. I think he was on his way.
He was on the way to the All African People's Congress in Accra, Ghana, which was held last December 12th.
Should one take this to mean that you approve of him and what he's doing, what he's saying?
No, I don't approve of any form of extremism, but I again say that I believe in the right of all people to follow whatever document or whatever doctrine they believe in, and the right for me to oppose or to support.
The Amsterdam News quotes you from a speech delivered at a rally sponsored in Harlem by the United African Nationalist Movement. The rally was commemorating African Freedom Day, I believe. And you were quoted as having said, "Henceforth we are no longer Negroes, but rather Americans of African descent." Is this an accurate quotation?
Yes, Mr. Lomax.
Do you really feel this way, sir?
I do feel that way.
Do you proudly associate yourself with African nationalist movements?
No, as borough president of Manhattan, I have been asked by that group to issue a proclamation, and I was happy to do it because of the fact that it indicated a certain date which was designated not by me, but publicly designated as the day known as African Day.
So you have issued, I believe, in the past 2 years, 2 or more proclamations for the United African Nationalist Movement. One on Garvey Day, I believe, and then later one for African Freedom Day. Is this true, sir?
Yes. Well, all of us are certainly in knowledge of the contribution made by Marcus Garvey.
Yes. Now, let me see if I understand you correctly. Are you saying, sir, that you are not a member of the United African Nationalist Movement, but that you do consider these people a substantial, respected group in the community, and that you acceded to their request to issue proclamations? Is this what you say?
That's quite right, Mr. Lomax.
But what do Congressman Powell and Borough President Jack know about the Muslims? Reporter Lomax asked both men to comment on the Muslims and their teachings. The exchange begins as Hewlin Jack admits that he welcomed Elijah Muhammad to New York, and then that he, Jack, spoke at a Muslim rally.
Yes, I greeted him as Borough President of Manhattan.
Should this be taken to mean that you agree with his religious, political, economic philosophy?
I know nothing about Mohammedanism. I have never sought to know anything about it.
You spoke at one of his meetings, didn't you?
I spoke as president of the Borough of Manhattan and expressed the greetings of the Borough of Manhattan to this man who had come here for the meeting of these people.
At the meetings, what did you say? Did you support the Muslim movement? Did you support them in their notions that the white man is a snake and a devil and should be destroyed?
I have no reason in the world to support that idea, because this world has on it white men, black men, yellow men, brown men, and all must live together in peace and harmony, and that has been my background ever since I've known my existence.
If I understand you properly, you have said to me that you issue these plaques, that you attend these meetings because as Borough President of Manhattan, you have to recognize the existence of these groups. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, sir, with no harm meant, but if the White Citizens Council had a meeting, would you give them a plaque? Would you attend their meeting and speak?
Well, the White Citizens Council is not in existence in Manhattan, and certainly should have no reason for existence.
Congressman, I want to return again to the Muslims of whom we spoke earlier. You say you know Minister Malcolm X,
yes,
and you respect him as a very brilliant man.
I think he's a very brilliant man.
They teach, and he said it to this reporter, among other things, that the proper interpretation of the incident in the Garden of Eden is that Adam and Eve were black men, and that the serpent was a white man who came in and, to say the least, brought on disquietude, and that the white man is not a devil, but the devil, a snake of the grafter type, and must be destroyed. How does this sound?
I totally disassociate myself from any such belief, just as I totally disassociate myself from the belief of some of my fellow clergymen who preach that there is no room in Christianity for a black man except as a servant and a slave.
But Congressman, in all 20th century seriousness, would it disturb you if the reverse took place, if a white group had such a school and they were teaching their children that Negroes were snakes and devils and should be destroyed? In all seriousness, sir, wouldn't that disturb you?
Oh, it disturbs me that if he preaches that kind of doctrine of hate, because I don't know of any religion that has in it a principle of hatred. There are various degrees of love, but not any degrees of hate.
The man called brilliant at the beginning of that colloquy by Adam Powell, the man who preached a vesper service in Adam Powell's church, this man, Malcolm X, is, as we said, by his own admission, a former dope peddler and procurer, an ex-convict who served time in Michigan and Massachusetts prisons. He is now a changed man, he says, because Elijah Muhammad's personal brand of Islam taught him no longer to be ashamed to be a black man. So it becomes evident that responsible leaders of the Negro community are fully aware of the activities and the teachings of the black supremacists. Now we ask, in what measure has the white man earned the hate of these extremists? To what extent does Christianity deserve to be called by these groups the religion of enslavement? To place this aspect of our story in perspective, Newsbeat visited Dr. Anna Arnold Hedgeman. When the ideal of integration was just a timid dream for the Negro, Ann Hedgeman was executive director of the National Committee for a Permanent FEPC. She has served with distinction as administrative aide to the Federal Security Administration of Oscar Ewing and to New York's Mayor Robert Wagner. Dr. Hedgeman lives among her fellow Negroes. She knows their problems. Newsbeat reporter Lou Lomax asks Dr. Hedgeman her opinion of the creed of black supremacy.
Dr. Hedgeman, how long have you lived in Harlem?
About 30 years.
Then you are thoroughly familiar with the goings-on in the Harlem community.
No, I don't know what you mean by goings-on, Louis, but I'm very familiar with Harlem, let us say.
Now, Dr. Hedgeman, let's get down to brass tacks, so to speak. What would be your reaction if a white group held a rally at 42nd and Broadway and said the kinds of things about Negroes that these street corner orators are saying about whites and Jews?
First of all, I would be opposed to it no matter who did it. I want that on the record. However, the situations are not analogous.
Why aren't they analogous?
For the very simple reason that America has bottled up the Negro in such fashion that what he pours out is his complete reaction to frustration on the one hand and his objection to much of the unintelligent way in which he has been handled as an American.
But now, pardon, but aren't you saying this, that previous condition of servitude or state of persecution justifies the preaching of race hate, whereas the absence of this historical business does not justify it?
No, I did not say it's justified. I said this is the reason.
Well, is it right?
Absolutely, it's not right, no matter who does it.
Does it offend the democratic ethic?
Yes, but you see, America's policy defends it.
But what about the attacks on Christianity, both by the Muslims and the black nationalists? Reporter Lomax learned that Dr. Hedgeman herself, in a recent speech, had commented on the color of Jesus' skin.
During a recent speech before a group of graduate nurses, I believe, you said, and I hope I quote you correctly, God may not be black.
Not God.
But he certainly isn't white. Is that a direct quote?
We're talking about Jesus, actually.
Yes. What is your quote on that?
My quote is that Jesus may not have been black, but he certainly was not white.
Is it important?
Very important.
Why?
I think maybe some of us like to say as Christians that there's no picture of Jesus in the Bible because everybody then could claim him. And you see, you claim when pressure has been put upon you to claim things in terms of color, as it has in this country. You want a piece of this guy who was a terrific prophet.
And to have a piece of him, so to speak,
just a little like you, yes.
Physically?
Just a little, yes, because America...
Not in terms of mind or spirit or belief?
Physically, too, because America has made this important, you see. We've made this important everywhere. One goes down the streets in Bombay and sees the models, not brown Indian girls, but Anglo-Saxon girls, because the British then were in control.
Well, now, when you say that this color factor should emerge, isn't this, in a sense, a return to tribalisms?
America is about at the tribalistic stage, yes.
You really believe this?
Yes, color-wise. On this issue of color, yes. America, I don't know why white people are so absolutely wound up on this business, but it has to be white. If you could manage it, you ought to be white with blue eyes and blonde hair.
So we learn that a growing segment of the Negro population is losing faith in the American dream. They reject the designation of Negro. They consider themselves rather Americans of African descent. And reporter Lomax asks Dr. Hedgeman to explain why.
Speaking of these forces, these groups in Harlem are now preaching something of a nationalist gospel. They are saying that the American Negro should, in a sense, identify himself with Africa. How do you feel about this?
I feel, again, this is the temper of the world today. Everybody is looking for something which belongs to him. And this is the thing that the American Negro looks for. He wanted it to be America because he's the most American of any group here.
Why doesn't he identify with America?
America has never permitted, thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, reserved for whites only. Remember? You should ask me this question.
Well, do you feel that the American Negro is an African?
Of course he's part African.
But isn't he part something else?
Oh, he's many other things. He actually, he's the real American.
Then why,
he's some of everything.
Then why isolate Africa to identify with? Why not identify with some other source of one's culture?
Because the largest portion of him is African.
And there you have it. Tragic and irrefutable evidence that a small but growing segment of the American Negro population is giving ear to a flagrant doctrine of black supremacy. I think that we stated our basic convictions about the matter when we entitled this program, The Hate That Hate Produced. Even so, it is still hate, organized hate. Before asking our panel what can be done about the rising tide of black supremacy movements, I'd like to talk for a minute with my colleague Lou Lomax, who did the research and the interviews for this story. Lou, you've written for such magazines as The New Leader, The Nation, Pageant. As a staff writer for the Chicago American, you covered the school integration disputes in Clinton, Tennessee, and Sturgis Clay, Kentucky, Little Rock. How would you compare this assignment with others that you've been on?
Mike, this one was a little rough. Whenever you are covering a story that involves the emotions of people, there's always an element of danger. This is the first time I think my color's ever been in my favor rather than against me, but on the whole, I would say that this assignment was a little rough.
Rough in what sense, Lou?
Well, let me give you a couple of instances. The night we did the piece on the Harlem street corner where you heard Mr. Davis and the phony liberals bit, I had with me the camera crew and Dan Meenan and Sandy Goodman of our staff. All of them are white. We were, in a sense, menaced. They were called bad names. I was called a dirty, no-good nigger who brought the people up to spy, this kind of thing. A crowd gathered, and we were a little bit apprehensive. In Washington, for the Muslim rally, I was all right. The camera crew, again, was white. They were in a little bit of danger, and one or two times the cameraman wandered away from the camera, and some of the Muslims came up to me and said, "You are responsible for these white men, and we don't want them running around loose. You better go with them wherever they're going."
As you see it, Lou, why is it that some Negroes, these Negroes we've been talking about tonight, have returned hate for hate, while others have not?
Well, I think one of the reasons is that the Christian notion of turning the other cheek has stuck. This is one reason why the Muslims must undo Christianity, so to speak, if they are to succeed. And then recent advancements in race relations, from the integrationist point of view, these advancements have justified the sober-minded Negro's faith. Then there is this, Mike. We Negroes have invested quite a bit in America. It's not my fault that we're here. It's not your fault as a white man that the race problem exists. America was born with a race problem, and we've helped to eliminate it. Our backs have borne a great deal of the burden, and the general feeling is that America is on the upbeat, that we're going up, that our country is getting better, and I see no point in turning our backs upon America now. It's like pushing the wagon up the hill and then refusing to ride down. And I think this is the attitude of most Negroes. I hope so, anyway.
Thank you, Lou, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Well, there is our story and our reporter's comment on it. But the ultimate burden of all of this rests on the New York community, Negro and white. And we have asked 5 members of that community to join Mr. Lomax and me to discuss the implications of this story. And we'll begin that discussion in just a couple of minutes after these commercial messages.
He's written a book called The Message to the Black Man in America, which will soon be published. And we have used this book to base a number of our questions to Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad, in this book you make a number of stipulations of which we would like to press you on in the course of the session today. One, you call for the separation of the Negro into a separate state, either in this United States or made possible by the United States. 2, you say that war between the whites and the blacks is inevitable.
Yes. I'm very glad to answer these questions, Mr. Clark, to you and to the world. They are most essential that we should give the world the answer to such questions. I have been preaching and teaching the answers to these questions for many years. I give thanks first, Mr. Cup, to God, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad around 34 years ago now to me. And all that I have and been teaching, it is from him. And it is very easy for us to recognize the physics of this mighty one according to the time. If we have the knowledge of the time that we are living in, we can accept and respect this mighty visitor in this part of the world to fulfill that which was written of him. that he will come. And now he has come, and he has given out his purpose and his aims, as it also is written in the Bible and Quran. And therefore, I have nothing of myself in this answer. It is all from him.
From him, you mean the messenger of Allah?
No, not the messenger of Allah. I'm the messenger of Allah. I mean from Allah himself, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad.
Who preceded you as the head of the Muslims?
Well, he was actually the beginner. Yes, sir. And I'm taught by him. This separation we begin with, it is absolutely necessary. We have lived here in America for the last 400 years and have served our slave masters well before these past 100 years. And now the time has arrived that we want something for ourselves. The natural spirit of God is moving in us and making us to think in such terms towards self. And the doing for self is now getting into the very life of the black man in America. We want to go for self. We want to be ourselves. This is aroused in us by God himself. And to oppose it means nothing but death to either side. If we oppose it, it's death for us. If others oppose it, it's death to them.
But even your own people oppose it, Mr. Muhammad, if I may interject a thought here. Most of the civil rights leaders with whom I know you disagree, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Whitney Young, and Roy Wilkins, and James Foreman, and James Farmer, and any number of others, all believe in integration, getting along with the whites and moving into the same society.
This is all due to their lack of knowledge of the time and what should be done in such time. They don't know that this is their time, that they should be separated, that they should go for themselves. This is what I'm trying to teach them. Teach them that this is the time that they should go for themselves.
But is it not, would you disagree that it is the ambition and the goal of most Negroes in this country to become Americans in every meaning of that word, to participate in our society, to be responsible, legitimate, honest citizens? Isn't that the goal of the overwhelming number of Negroes in this country?
It may be their goal, Mr. Cup, because that they don't even know, as I just said, that this is the time that they should be going for self. And lack of knowledge of the time, the lack of knowledge of self. The American so-called Negro, especially the leading class, do not actually know themselves. Excuse my voice as I'm a little like trying to be a little hoarse this morning, but however, I may clear it up later. America's so-called Negro, as you know, have been kept in the dark of the truth of self and kind for now 400 years, and the only one to break forth this truth, it is God himself, as it is written. And the Bible, Ezekiel, and prophesied by Jesus, that the dead must rise, mentally dead. So our so-called leadership is as dumb as those they are leading to this knowledge. Therefore, they hoped that they could have a place somewhere in the life of the white man of America and in his country and government. They seek that place. Not that they seek some portion of the country right here. They seek only recognition of the white man as being a citizen of America and being his equal. This is the wrong thing to be seeking. since we now have served our prophetic term of slavery here in America, and now we have a taste of education of our slave masters and their children. We don't go now to the colleges and universities of the white man looking for degrees to go back to him then for a job, to work, live with him, or some bread in the bread line.
Well, what is wrong with that ambition, Mr. Muhammad? It seems to be working out in growing numbers.
A subject, a servant all the time. He's not getting an equal place with his master by seeking a job. The only thing that he should seek now, since he admits that he's free, and he is free, he's not no more a servitor slave. He's free.
The growing number of Negroes who have achieved prominence in all the fields of this country, economic, the social life, the arts, indicates that there is tremendous progress being made, and the growing middle class of the Negro is tremendous today, with a tremendous purchasing power.
Mr. Cup, but the progress is only being made to the position or status of a more prominent servant, and not a servant that is equal with his master, and only such thing is placed on this bed that he can call his own like his master.
Do you say that people like the Dr. Ralph Bunches and any number of other Negroes who have achieved fame and fortune are still servants in this community?
His fame and fortune is not his. That's the white man. He have achieved fame and fortune for the white man, not for his black man. All that the prominent, I would say, politicians, teachers, and clergy, all has worked forward to the help of the white man to achieve fame for him and his race, but not for themselves and their race.
Let me take you to another area, Mr. Muhammad. Our government is spending millions of dollars in various programs, mostly aimed at uplifting the Negro for better education, better job opportunity, a better share of this society. Now, isn't that a worthy commentary on the white man's role?
If the slave man is rich and richer, he can do better by his servant, his slave. But the slave is now, as I say, stands at the crossroad. He can go for himself. And why not the master teach him how to go for himself and provide him with the necessary means to go for himself, and not keep petting him around his door with a better suit of clothes.
Let's assume, Mr. Muhammad, that your separation policy comes into effect. You will ask the United States to give you a state large enough to take care of all the Negroes in this land. That would be about 1/5 of the territory.
Well, it's about 22 or more million.
And then you would ask the United States for 25 or 30 years, according to your book, The Message to the Black Man, to help operate this for 25 or 30 years.
Not 30.
25.
or 25.
And also to give you a land that's fertile and rich in minerals so that the Negro can make a life from the earth.
Yes, sir.
A justifiable living.
Yes, sir.
How would you bring an economic system? How would you get the people to start a new state?
How would we get them to start? I'm asking you for the start.
You want the government to start the states for you, to build all the buildings and give you the education system, and give you a business.
We believe that you are obligated to start us off in such state, according to your own civilization, or set up for your own civilization. The means that you have to set your own race up as an independent race here today, not what you had 400 or 500 years ago, but what you have today.
Let me pause for just a moment, Mr. Muhammad. We still have to interrupt for commercials on this program. Pause for a moment and be right back with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad, while we're talking about this very unique proposition of yours as expressed in the Message to the Black Man and, of course, in all your philosophy, it's interesting to note that Abraham Lincoln once proposed or thought that all Negroes, perhaps for their own best interest, should be moved to a separate state. And Garvey, a great leader of the Negroes many, many years ago, proposed that the Negroes have their own state. He was never too successful. And if I remember correctly, the communists in the early 30s, at the height of the Depression, urged that the Negroes be given their own state in an effort to capitalize on their following, I presume. None of these ever came to fruition or were ever successful or ever interested too many Negroes. How do you figure that you today can get Negroes to leave this country of theirs and go elsewhere?
Well, I will not have any power to do, don't have any power, to do any more than those teachers that preceded me on the same subject. I myself don't have any power of myself to bring about such change. But God is with me to bring it about. And the time is with me.
How has your God, Allah, manifested himself in this presentation?
He has manifested himself in the person of a man, and with the knowledge of the end of the history that we have been in service to white people, and the time that we should be separated from them. This knowledge was given by him, and he is the one that is backing it up. It is not me. I don't want you to look at me as nothing but a messenger. That's all I am, just a messenger to tell you what someone said to me. This that I have said to you concerning the separation, it is not said contrary to prophecy. The sayings of the prophets concerning a separation of the slave and his master. It is not contrary. But where I comes in there of asking you if you would like to do something for yourself and admitting this justice from yourself, as this is nothing but justice, to give the slave something to go with if you have freedom. That America has never done for us. Our parents was never given anything to prove yourself. Now, the time have come that God himself will intervene to separate the so-called Negro or the lost members of their people, the black nation of the earth, from their once slave masters. This is the time, according to the prophetic sayings and writings of prophets, that we must be separated.
I just want to ask you one question along the separation theory before we move on. There are approximately 22 million Negroes in the United States. There's an estimated 100,000 members of these who belong to your sect. Now, how can you expect 100,000 to dominate 22 million who don't feel the same way that you do?
Oh, Mr. Cups, the number doesn't mean anything. We have history dating back that just less people than that. Even the people that dominated in the world today, your own race, they was not started with even 100,000. Only 59,000 was used to make your own world. It don't make any difference about the number. It's only the ones that believing in the honest about accomplishing the aim and the purpose.
If you had your choice of territory in this country, where would you select?
Well, I'm not saying as I have said time and again. I will not say. Yes, I would like to have a room in your house. Whoever you are willing to give me a room there.
Mr. Muhammad, in your book, you also say that war between the non-whites and the whites is inevitable.
If you will permit me, Mr. Gupp, I would like to go back here to this separation again.
All right.
We often has been misunderstood on this. We know that the prophesied says that we should be returned or will be returned to our own. But I have said here in this book, and almost weekly I'm saying something about it, that if America wants to ease their troubles, as this is the trouble that she is confronted with, it is free. I don't care what someone might say or may say about the problem, but the problem of America, it is her slave. And the solution has been given. And this is just only a little twist of the solution that I am presenting to America today. That instead of all of this, I would say, mistreating the poor man, crying out today for more justice and better justice, better recognition, put him over here in some place. You have a house big enough to do so. Put him over here someplace to himself. Regardless to what he says, you know the truth. You know that he should be somewhere to himself, because you will never agree to all that he demands you of. You cannot do so unless you want to become a subject slave yourself, or that you want to get in the same status that your slave is in, to yield to all of his demands. That is trying to respect one slave as your equal. You can't do that and keep your respect in the world of civilized nation. But you can, I should say, stop trying to force the ideal in the slave that he is as good, he is as honored, he is as much as the master. This cannot be accepted as truth, even from the master. I just given, if you will just permit me, I will give you a chance then. By giving him a chance to sit in the house with you and talk with you and your family, or even marry your sons and daughters, that's not yet making him your equal. Or to prepare in your laboratories jobs for him, factories, build factories, to give him a job, keep him at work. That is not making him your equal yet. He's still unequal. And it's a real ignorant thing to say he's my equal because I give him social status with me. This is bad on the white man's part, even to offer his slave integration in marriage, intermarriage. It only makes him worse in the eyes of the world, and his intelligence is now has been, I would say, lost, and his decency of his society is lost, even by just offering the slave such opportunity. But if he would go and offer his slave a place over here to himself, say, boy, you have allowed me to use this slave. Boy, you have been a good old plowboy for me. Now I'm going to let you plow for yourself. Here's a mule, here's a plow. I will furnish you plow tools until that you are able to pay for them or make them yourself.
You don't think that the white man really thinks of the Negro as boy anymore? That
I
this
said
era
that
has
allowed me
passed so
to
many
use the
years
word,
ago.
but he still calls them boys in many parts of the country.
You still refuse to acknowledge, though, that the tremendous progress of any number of Negroes in all the arts, in all the political world, in all the sports world, in the entertainment world, in education, these people are not the equal of the whites with their tremendous success?
Well, if he has made progress in the way of civilization for the white man, or in the civilization of the white man, well, why object then to him doing this for himself? Let him make a way now for himself.
But don't you fear, Mr. Muhammad, that this success is generated among the Negro youth who look up to these people as idols, and they themselves take a place in the society as successful people, inspired by their own people who have made successes?
Until he learned the truth. When he learned the truth of himself and of those who knew that he is worshiping, then he will go for himself. As I have this spirit to go for myself. I don't want to be a slave for you. I don't want you to use me as a servant. I want to be my independent self. I want some of this faith for my people like you. You came here and taken it by the knowledge and power of your own fathers from the Indian, and you made a great country out of it. Then you go back to my country and brings us here to serve you as free labor. For 300 years we have did that for you, willingly or unwillingly. We did so, and our fathers. Now, for 100 years, you say we are free. And 100 years we are not free. We are so blind, deaf, and dumb, we still look forward to you to make our clothes for us, get the cotton and the wool, go and put it through the mill, and make cloth out of it for us, and we still sitting looking at you do all of this for us.
Mr. Muhammad, if you'll pardon me, I must say that your interpretation of the Negro is far different than mine. You sound more like Governor Wallace when you say the Negro is deaf, dumb, and blind. You don't want to be linked with Governor Wallace as one of the outstanding
No, I say that
racists.
because God himself said it. It's written in the Bible and Quran. Wallace didn't write this.
No, but he announces and enunciates the same principle that you're enunciating.
Well,
the Negro is dumb, not
he's
equal.
saying what God in the Bible said. The Bible said that we are blind and dumb and even dead.
Well, many people certainly will disagree with that.
Well, they disagree with God and the prophets then.
Only in your Bible, not in any other Bible.
It's in your Bible.
That the Negro is dumb and
I
blind.
got mine from you.
We'll have to pause for a moment, Mr. Muhammad, for a message, and we'll be right back. Mr. Muhammad, I know you want to say a few more words on separation before we go into
Yes,
another
Mr. Cup, I'm very anxious to finish what we started with on the separation. It is very nice and good for America to prepare educationally her slaves that she once had in servitude. The education that we have acquired from white America, it helps us to begin to foreself anywhere on this earth that we may prefer to go or stay. If we are to stay here with you, we must stay in a separate part of America with you. And the education is still accepted. We need all the education. I must stop and say that we can, of good education, to help us to go for self. And as far as our reaction to what we have acquired in the way of education, it doesn't mean that we should now be satisfied to remain with you just because that we have now acquired more respect of self in the way of education and can do more better service for you than we have in the past. The thing of it is, since we have acquired enough to make a step out of the house of bondage where that our fathers was enslaved or put in bondage, we should now go, and you should help us to go and provide the necessary means for us to continue going in the way of self. This would also give you a great and a good name. The slave masters send his slave off with the provision to keep going for himself. We need modern tools now. We don't need to apply new. We need a tractor. And we need the land, certainly, that will provide a living and the necessity of life otherwise, such as buildings and other machineries. We want space that we can go into as you have went into it and pull out of our treasures the necessary means for us to build a nation for ourselves.
But is this consistent, Mr. Muhammad, with your position? You were saying about the Negro doing things for himself. Then you say the government must turn around and give him all this territory and operate it for him for 20 years.
We think the government is obligated. We have given 400 years. And now we want to go for ourselves. How are we to get started for ourselves if the slave master is not willing to provide the means for us to go free for ourselves?
In your position on separation, did you feel that the Supreme Court made a mistake in 1954 when it ruled that segregation must end in the public school systems?
No, I don't say the government made a mistake by saying that the kind of segregation that we have lived under should be terminated. I don't think she made any mistake there. But I do think the government is making a mistake now to try to hinder us from being separated. Since we have already lived under segregation for the past centuries. Now we would like to be separated and live over here to ourselves, since we cannot get along with you in peace.
Let me take you into another area that we discussed at the opening of the show, Mr. Muhammad. That is your prediction in the book, The Message to the Black Man, that the whites and the non-whites inevitably must come to a war. Do you really feel that there must be a war between the races?
If you will not submit to the law of justice, freedom, justice, and equality, and submit to do good. Second, this is the time that good confronts us to rule the people, and not evil. Your history teaches us that you have always warred. In Europe, there was once a 100-year war, a 30-year war, and there have continued a war history of your race ever since you had civilization.
But it isn't only the white man, Mr. Muhammad. Every man, white, red, yellow, has always engaged in war. This is much as the white man.
History never gives us any knowledge of a war between the brown, yellow, black races before you.
Well, the Chinese and the Japanese warred for many, many centuries, and certainly the blacks in Africa had their tribal wars, and the Muslims and Christianity had their religious wars. I mean, war has been a part of man ever since.
And in your sphere of ruling the people since 6,000 years, you will mention what happens in the period of 6,000 years. Well, you are the boss there. You started there.
You maintain that the white man, according to this book, has been on this earth only 6,000 years.
Only 6,000.
And that the black man was many, many years, centuries before.
We don't have no book for it.
But the anthropological facts may differ with you, but this is, of course, according to your religion, right?
It depends on the man who does the analyzation of this past history of our people's bones and rocks and whatnot.
Your statement of inevitable war is so reminiscent of what Red China has been saying, that the yellow race and with the colored race will fight the white race. That it's a little frightening that you would be in the same the same line of reasoning with him.
We cannot move ourselves if we are there by God himself. In the beginning we are there, and you are there. In the very beginning, we cannot change nothing, and I'm not asking no one to accept any change that I would try and make, because I'm not trying to make one. Everything, Mr. Cup, that I say concerning the truth, whether it's war or whether it's separation of nations, I have it from Bible, Quran, from Jesus, from all the prophets in the past, from God himself, and I'm not talking myself. I'm talking what God and his prophets say.
Of course, Mr. Muhammad, Jesus, and all the other recognized religious leaders always preached love, not hatred.
I take for an instance, Jesus, he taught love of his father. We used the name he used there. It taught that we should love the Father. We should love the word or the teachings of God. We should love the man that loves God and loves the teachings of God. This was Moses' teaching to Israel, was to love thy God with all thy heart, soul, might, and strength. But you are not taught to love the enemy, the nations that will not love your God and will not allow you to pass through or not allow you to settle in your own land. You should destroy that nation, or God will destroy them before you. This is Moses. Then God goes so far as to say himself that there was two brothers, that he loved one and hated the other. God is the first hater. Jesus also seconds his Father in these words, that unless you can hate your mother, brother, sister, father, pick up your cross and come follow me, you cannot be my disciple. You have to hate first there. He gives to us well-known teachings there in Matthew. I think it's around Matthew or in John 1. Anyway, it's there in his teaching. Here comes again some more of Jesus' teaching. He mentions this thing of the two brothers. One hated, another loved, to verify his own hatred of the evil people. He did not declare himself as being a lover of all men. He could not be the representative of God if he loved all people, because some people are evil. And a time of judging and letting out sentences to the evil and or the contrary people of God is also on the page of history that these prophets put there for us to read and study. Moses did so, and now comes Jesus, who covers his spear of delivering the message to Israel, a final message, and then denounces Israel as being enemies of God, and that a day of judgment is set for your execution. All of this is given right there of the Bible that is put in the words of Jesus. And we continue to have this, and in the beginning we have it, Moses addressed Israel, and Deuteronomy there, saying to Israel that in the very beginning, when we speak of separation, that God separated the sons of Adam. If God saw it more best and peaceful to separate these sons of Adam, brothers, these sons represent brothers. They can't live together. We separate the very sons of Adam and give them a place on the earth and set boundaries for them, that they cannot be entering in and out of the other country without permission. Boundary means that you must have permission to come in my part of the country. And now, all of this is set forth to us in the Bible, and the Christians say we should believe. If the Christian don't believe in his own Bible, the sayings of his own Bible, how can he preach to us to believe in it?
University of Alabama.
Light of reality, because we have not faced reality, because we as a people live in a world of fantasy. And once we face reality and use religion properly, and once we understand how they are used by other people, and once we separate, not so much as separate spirituality from religions, and understand that out of our spirituality came the world's religions, and that we have been naive and let people take from us the basis, the elements, make religions and come back and sell them to us. Once we understand that, and that we had a much better version of the same religions before their former creation, and then once we recover from the shock of discovering that we had something better than what was sold to us, rehashed from our elements, then go back and take the great spirituality we had and move with it. And once we understand what we were and where we are, we will understand what we have to be and where we still have to go. We are still thinking minority. We were never a minority. But we are letting minority people fool us into thinking minority. And we are literally being controlled by minorities who endear themselves to other minorities by demonstrating their ability to control us.